Chapter 330. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more wonderful content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. There are novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet here. Gu Jiao entered Rinshou Palace by showing her face. All the masters and servants of Rinshou Palace knew her and knew that she was Empress Dowager Zhuang's favorite, so no one dared to stop her. Although Empress Dowager Zhuang ordered that she would not see anyone this afternoon, noble consort Zhuang was not so lucky. As soon as she arrived at the gate of Rinshou Palace, she was stopped by the guards. Noble consort Zhuang said, "Go and pass the message. I have something urgent to see Empress Dowager Zhuang." The guard replied, "Sorry, Empress Dowager Zhuang ordered that she would not see anyone." Noble consort Zhuang frowned, "But I saw someone go in just now. That was Miss Gu. She went to treat Empress Dowager Zhuang." The guard finally knew not to make Gu Jiao hate him. Noble consort Zhuang was relieved when she heard that it was for treatment. But the next moment, she asked worriedly, "Is Empress Dowager Zhuang sick?" The guard said, "Empress Dowager Zhuang was slightly unwell yesterday and invited Miss Gu to the palace to treat Empress Dowager Zhuang. Today Miss Gu came to check on Empress Dowager Zhuang." Noble consort Zhuang thought for a moment. "Then I have to go in and visit Empress Dowager Zhuang." "This," noble consort Zhuang said. "I won't embarrass you. Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't let you disturb her, but Miss Gu didn't say this. Go and invite Miss Gu." "Yes." The guard looked at the little palace maid on the side. The little palace maid understood and quickly caught up with Gu Jiao. Gu Jiao was talking to eunuch Qin in the small garden in front of the hall. The little palace maid said, "Miss Gu, eunuch Qin, noble consort Zhuang is here. She wants to see Miss Gu." Eunuch Qin was a shrewd person. Noble consort Zhuang and Gu Jiao were not familiar with each other. She wanted to see her and hoped that Gu Jiao could pass the message to Empress Dowager Zhuang. "Empress Dowager Zhuang is reading the memorial. We dare not disturb her." "Oh, then I'll wait too." Gu Jiao didn't want to be special. "Good." Eunuch Qin smiled and took Gu Jiao to Empress Dowager Zhuang's bedroom. In fact, with the Empress Dowager's love for Miss Gu, she wouldn't mind Miss Gu's disturbance at all. In fact, Miss Gu could even find some time to have some fun during the boring days of official business. However, Miss Gu had never become arrogant because she was pampered. She had her own limits and limits. She was good to the Empress Dowager, not to get the Empress Dowager's favor, but because she sincerely hoped that the Empress Dowager could live a good life. Eunuch Qin went to the gate of Rinshou Palace to see noble consort Zhuang and said politely, "Miss Gu is also waiting for the Empress Dowager to summon her." At this point, noble consort Zhuang couldn't say anything more. Fortunately, there weren't many memorials today, so Empress Dowager Zhuang left the study soon. Eunuch Qin reported, "Empress Dowager, Miss Gu and the Imperial Consort are here." Empress Dowager Zhuang said, "Let her in." This was referring to noble consort Zhuang. She understood the rules that she had set. Jiao Jiao could enter, but outsiders could not. "Yes." Eunuch Qin led noble consort Zhuang into the Empress Dowager's bedroom. Gu Jiao had just finished examining Empress Dowager Zhuang. Her throat had recovered well, but she seemed to have a little heat stroke because of the hot weather. Gu Jiao took ginger slices and sesame oil to scrape her arm. Noble consort Zhuang respectfully bowed and said, "Empress Dowager." "Speak, what's the matter?" Empress Dowager Zhuang asked faintly. Her throat was injured, so it still hurt when she used it. Eunuch Qin had already left with the palace people. There were only 3 of them left in the huge bedroom. Noble consort Zhuang glanced at Gu Jiao, who was scraping Empress Dowager Zhuang's skin. She understood that Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't mean to avoid Gu Jiao. She lowered her eyes and said softly, "Empress Dowager, do you really not care about Hunger's marriage? How can Hunger marry?" She looked at Gu Jiao again, and chose her words carefully. She omitted the unfriendly words and directly said, "Gu Jinyu? She is only the adopted daughter of Marquis Ding An's Fu. Her status is lowly and her morals are lacking. Marrying her will implicate Hung and make him the laughingstock of the capital." Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at her faintly, as if indicating for her to continue. Noble consort Zhuang's gaze swept back and forth between Gu Jiao and said, "What's more, Gu Jinyu stole Miss Gu's credit. It's unfair to Miss Gu to praise her like this." Empress Dowager Zhuang said in a deep voice, "Don't use others as a raft." Noble consort Zhuang hesitated and said, "Yes." Gu Jiao continued to scrape, and had no intention of participating in the conversation. As for Empress Dowager Zhuang, she didn't react much to Noble consort Zhuang's complaints. Noble consort Zhuang couldn't help but feel anxious. This situation was different from what she had imagined. The Empress Dowager had a heart of stone, but she loved Zhuang Yuheng. She didn't agree to sending Zhuang Yuheng to Qin country as a hostage. Now that Zhuang Yuheng had been tricked by the emperor to this extent, why was she unmoved? Noble consort Zhuang continued, "Empress Dowager, Heng Er's wife must be of equal status and be of help to him. But what does Gu Jinyu have? She isn't even Marquis Ding, and's flesh and blood. Could it be that Marquis Ding and Fu will side with her in the future? Moreover, I suspect that the emperor wants to plant a spy in the Zhuang family. Marquis Ding and Fu was the emperor's confidant. The emperor had Gu Jinyu marry into the Zhuang family for two reasons. First, it would break the Zhuang family's plans to form a strong marriage alliance with other aristocratic families. Second, it would allow the emperor to monitor the actions of royal prince and the Zhuang family. Noble consort Zhuang felt that the emperor had this plan. In reality, the emperor didn't have this plan. But just as the emperor didn't trust Empress Dowager Zhuang, Noble consort Zhuang didn't trust the emperor's intentions. The Zhuang family couldn't make any mistakes, and they couldn't lose a great opportunity to form a marriage alliance with a powerful aristocratic family. The more powerful royal princein was, the more support her son, Ning Wang, would have. And Noble consort Zhuang saw that reasoning wasn't effective, so she played the family card. Empress Dowager Zhuang closed her eyes to rest. Noble consort Zhuang was extremely anxious. She simply kicked the ball to Gu Jiao. "Miss Gu, what do you think?" She knew that Gu Jiao and Gu Jinyu didn't have a good relationship. She believed that Gu Jiao wouldn't speak up for Gu Jinyu, nor would she care about the battle between the Zhuang family and Marquis Ding and Fu. Gu Jiao was Empress Dowager Zhuang's person. Gu Jiao continued to scrape her grandaunt's skin. She paused and said, "This is Royal Prince An's marriage. Shouldn't it be up to him to decide? When the emperor bestowed the marriage, did you ask him if he would accept it? Is noble consort Nyang representing his own wishes?" Noble consort Zhuang was immediately stumped. Noble consort Zhuang returned without success. After Gu Jiao finished scraping Empress Dowager Zhuang's skin, she went to prepare her own gunpowder. The space in Baishui Alley was limited. She didn't dare to move too freely for fear of blowing up the residence. Rinshou Palace had enough empty space. It was fine even if it blew up. Eunuch Qin entered the room to serve Empress Dowager Zhuang. Her complexion was much better and her chest was no longer stuffy. Eunuch Qin offered up freshly cut fruits and said, "Is the Empress Dowager truly ignoring Royal Prince N's marriage?" Empress Dowager Zhuang seemed to mock and ridicule. The emperor acted first and then reported later. He gave Ijia such a large army. How can Ijia handle Ijia? Is this country really surnamed Zhuang? Ijia's hands have been stained with blood over the years. Everyone thinks that Ijia's power came easily. Who has seen Ijia treading on thin ice? Eunuch Qin deeply agreed. Outsiders only saw the Empress Dowager calling the wind and summoning the rain. They didn't see the blood dripping from the Empress Dowager's back. Empress Dowager Zhuang lightly said, "If Zhuang Yuheng wanted to cancel the marriage, he would have come to ask Ijia himself. If he didn't say anything, it means that he has accepted." Just as she finished speaking, a loud boom came from the small lawn in the side hall. The entire Rinshou Palace seemed to tremble. The two people's expressions changed. Eunuch Qin hurriedly took small steps and ran out. Miss Gu, are you all right?" A large part of the lawn was blasted bare. Gu Jiao was nowhere to be seen. Eunuch Qin was frightened. "Miss Gu." "I am here." A weak voice came from the top of Eunuch Qin's head. Eunuch Qin looked up and saw Gu Jiao's small black face and messy hair from the explosion. Her small arms and legs were drooping, like a small doll hanging soullessly from the high eaves. Gu Jiao opened her small mouth and spat out a mouthful of black smoke. Eunuch Qin was speechless. Gu Jiao was confused by the explosion. After being rescued by the palace's experts, she climbed onto her Grey-Tant's phoenix bed and slept for the whole afternoon. When she woke up, it was close to evening. Her great-aunt asked her to stay at Rinshou Palace for dinner. She thought for a moment and said, "Great-aunt, I'll make you some dates." It was mainly because she felt bad for blowing up her great-aunt's lawn today. No matter what, she had to make up for it. Dates were made with feta cheese, sun-dried red dates, and almonds. The red dates were naturally sweet and didn't need any extra sugar. The milk was fragrant, delicious, and nutritious. Red dates and almonds weren't hard to find, but the feta cheese had to be fetched from the imperial kitchen. While the chef of Rinshou Palace went to fetch the feta cheese from the imperial kitchen, Gu Jiao went to the imperial garden. She planned to pick some fresh flower petals and dry them to make tea. Not long after she started picking flowers in the imperial garden, several unfamiliar palace maids came over. They also picked some fresh flowers with baskets in their hands. Gu Jiao put the basket full of flowers on the stone table, then went to pick another basket full. There seemed to be a lot of flower petals, but there wasn't much left once they were dried. Gu Jiao returned with a full load. Coincidentally, the feta cheese had also been brought over. She handed the basket to Eunuch Qin and turned to the small kitchen to make the dates. Inside Pure Flower's palace, the palace maids were all kneeling on the ground. The emperor and grand concubine Jing were sitting on chairs. The emperor frowned at the newly selected palace maids who served grand concubine Jing and said with a displeased expression, "How are you serving grand concubine? You actually made grand concubine's jade pendant disappear." Grand concubine Jing sighed. "It's not their fault. I lost it myself. When I went to the imperial garden just now, I seemed to have heard something, but I didn't pay attention to it. It must have been then that I lost it. This servant found it, but this servant..." One of the palace maids stuttered. Grand concubine Jing said gently, "Don't be afraid. Speak properly, I won't blame you." The palace maid gathered her courage and took a step forward before kowtowing. This servant picked up a jade pendant in the imperial garden. This servant didn't know that it was grand concubine who lost it, so this servant wanted to give it to manager Auntie. This servant placed the jade pendant on the table, but when this servant went to get it after picking the flowers, the jade pendant disappeared without a trace. The emperor asked in a low voice, "Why did you place the jade pendant on the table so casually?" The palace maid said fearfully, "That jade pendant was already broken, so this servant thought that it was worthless and wasn't anything good." Broken? The emperor looked at grand concubine Jing in surprise. Grand concubine Jing nodded bitterly and didn't say anything. Granny Kai said earnestly, 2 years ago, grand concubine fell and broke the jade pendant. A corner of it shattered and couldn't be reconnected. However, that was a memento that Princess Ning'an left for grand concubine, so even though it was broken, grand concubine still wore it every day. The emperor's heart ached when he heard that grand concubine Jing had fallen. He only regretted not bringing her back to the palace earlier to take care of her. "I've made mother suffer," he said guiltily. Grand concubine Jing said, "Your Majesty is too serious. It's only a fall. There are times when one's legs are inconvenient when they're old." From what I see, Rinshou Palace. The emperor wanted to say that the one in Rinshou Palace had nimble legs, even nimbler than before she contracted leprosy. He also felt that it wasn't appropriate to keep mentioning the Empress Dowager. He cleared his throat and looked at the palace maids kneeling on the ground. "Apart from you, who else went to the imperial garden?" The palace maids looked at each other in dismay. Although a piece of the jade was broken, the remaining half was still priceless. It wasn't an ordinary piece of jade, but 1,000-year-old cold jade from the Yen Kingdom. Just because the palace maid didn't know what it was didn't mean that others didn't know what it was. "Speak," the emperor said coldly. "Who took grand concubine's jade pendant?" Everyone kowtowed. It was the palace maid who had picked up the jade pendant that said, "Your Majesty, we really didn't take it. We didn't know what it was, so how could we have taken a piece?" She didn't dare to say that the jade was broken anymore. The emperor asked gravely, "Then apart from you, Who else went to the imperial garden? The palace maid thought for a moment and said, there was a girl. I don't know which palace she was from. She didn't dress like a concubine or palace maid. There was a red birthmark on the left side of her face. She wasn't a concubine or palace maid, and she had a red birthmark on the left side of her face. Who else could it be but Gu Jiao? That was awkward. If it was an ordinary jade pendant, the emperor wouldn't have bothered to look into it. However, it was a memento that Princess Ning and had left for Grand Concubine Jing. She was also someone that the emperor had once doted on. The emperor cared about her just as much as he cared about Grand Concubine Jing. Eunuch Wei glanced at the emperor with a complicated expression. Miss Gu couldn't tolerate sand in her eyes. If the emperor really dared to send someone to ask her if she had picked up the jade pendant, Miss Gu would probably never talk to him again. All right, even though I'm already angry at His Majesty. However, the nature of the matter was different. Miss Gu wasn't a person with dirty hands, but the emperor wouldn't let go of any clues. The difficult part was that once he asked, the seeds of hostility would be planted between them. Moreover, Miss Gu was now in Renshou Palace. What would the Empress Dowager think if she learned of this? She wouldn't rest until she gave the emperor a good scolding. The Empress Dowager could be wronged, but Miss Gu couldn't. Eunuch Wei silently wiped away his cold sweat. It was over. It was all over. The emperor composed himself and held Grand Concubine Jing's hand. The little divine doctor wouldn't pick up the jade pendant on the table. The Empress Dowager dotes on her and wishes to give her all the treasures in Renshou Palace. Although the Millennium Cold Jade given by Ning and is precious, it isn't to her liking. Ning and also gave me a Millennium Cold Jade. Since it's a memento left by Ning, and I'll have someone bring it to Mother. This servant will go get it right away. Eunuch Wei didn't wait for the emperor to give him an order and left quickly, as if he was afraid that the emperor would go back on his word. The emperor said, these little palace maids didn't do a good job and lost Mother's jade pendant. They don't have to serve Mother anymore. I'll choose some capable palace maids for Mother. Grand Concubine Jing smiled. I'm a vegetarian and pray to Buddha, so I don't need too many people by my side. Nurse Kai is enough. The emperor said, Nurse Kai is also old, so it's inevitable that she won't be able to do as she wishes. If there were a few clever palace maids by Mother's side today, they definitely wouldn't have missed Mother's jade pendant. Gu Jiao didn't know anything about Pure Flower's palace. She went to the small kitchen to make milk dates and fresh flower cakes. There were still quite a few fresh flowers left. The little palace maid smiled. I'll put them in a perfume pouch for Miss to use as dried flowers. That's fine. Gu Jiao nodded. The little palace maid found a golden threaded perfume pouch for dried flowers and stuffed all the remaining petals in the basket into it. After dinner, Gu Jiao returned to Jadewater Alley. Gu Shaoshan was scratching her head in the courtyard with a strange expression. What's wrong? Gu Jiao walked up and asked. Gu Shaoshan said, Marquis Gu fainted and hasn't woken up yet. As it turned out, after Gu Jiao went to visit her grandaunt, Marquis Gu didn't leave immediately. Instead, he asked his son where Yaoshi had gone. Just as he said that, he saw Yaoshi walk out of the room with a big belly. She wasn't just fat like a ball anymore. She really was carrying a ball in her stomach. There was nothing more frightening than a man coming back from a business trip to find his wife with a big belly. It wouldn't have been a big deal if that was all, but Marquis Xianping just had to walk over and say a few words to Yaoshi with a smile. Marquis Xianping was the most dissolute and unruly man in the capital. When he smiled seriously, there was a trace of roguishness and wickedness to it. Marquis Gu immediately felt like the sky was falling down. Marquis Gu had always been troubled by his own looks, but he couldn't help but admit that Marquis Xianping was better looking than him. This wastrel only needed to hook his finger, and there would be countless women throwing themselves at him. Could it be that his Yao Yao had also fallen for his trick? Otherwise, he really couldn't understand why Marquis Xianping would appear here. Anger attacked his heart, and the top of his head turned green. Marquis Gu could no longer hold himself back. His tongue stuck out, his eyes rolled back, and he fainted. Gu Jiao went to Yaoshi's room and checked Marquis Gu's pulse, saying, "He's fine." Yaoshi nodded. Although this husband was quite muddle-headed at times, He was still the father of 2. No, he was now her 3 children. She didn't want them to become fatherless children. But Yaosher looked at her belly that was constantly bulging. Was the movement of the fetus this strong at 6 months? Why did it feel like this child wanted to kick his father? Digression. At the end of the month, the tickets are cleared. Don't waste it. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111661660. HTML Genius. Remember this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikugo mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 331. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more frequently. Millions of novels are free to read. There are all kinds of novels that you can't find online. At night, Gu Jiao was recording the power and drawbacks of the various hidden weapons made with black gunpowder in the room. Unknowingly, it was late at night. Knock, knock, knock. Suddenly, there was a soft knock on the door. Gu Jiao rubbed her sore neck and turned to look at the half-closed door. The door is open. Come in. Xiao Lulang opened the door and walked in with a bowl of mung bean soup. He came in front of her and put the mung bean soup on the table in front of her. Gu Jiao looked at the bowl of mung bean soup that was chilled with well water and tilted her head in surprise. In the past, she was the one who brought things to him. Today, the sun rose in the west. It was his turn to bring things to her. Well, that's not right. When she had menstrual cramps, he had boiled brown sugar water for her. But today, she didn't have any cramps or menstrual cramps. She didn't understand why he was taking care of her like this. Xiao Lulang sat down across from her and said calmly, "Just now Jing Kong was clamoring for mung bean soup, so I made a little more. I saved a bowl for you." "Brother-in-law, what are you doing?" "Making mung bean soup." "I don't drink it. Jiao Jiao wants to drink it." "Well, okay, then I'll have a bowl too." The scene with little Jing Kong flashed through his mind. Xiao Lulang coughed softly. Gu Jiao didn't notice the slight change in his expression. She happened to be thirsty. She brought the mung bean soup over and scooped a spoonful into her mouth. Oh, it's so sweet. Everything Xiao Lulang made tasted bad except for the mung bean soup. But the way she ate it was beyond his imagination. Xiao Lulang couldn't help but ask, "Is it that good?" Gu Jiao scooped up a spoonful and fed it to him naturally. Xiao Lulang was slightly taken aback. Her eyes were magnanimous and her expression was pure, as if she didn't mean anything else. On the other hand, he was overthinking things and adding a lot of meanings that didn't exist. Xiao Lulang's throat moved. He slowly lowered his head, gently held the spoon, and drank the mung bean soup. "Is it sweet?" Gu Jiao asked. "It's sweet." He looked at her. She didn't know if he was referring to the soup or her. "I think so too." Gu Jiao took the spoon that he had drunk from and continued to eat the mung bean soup. Watching her put the spoon into her mouth, Xiao Liulang's eyes deepened. "Do you want more?" Gu Jiao looked at his burning eyes and pushed the mung bean soup in front of him. "I really want to eat." Halfway through his sentence, Xiao Lulang suddenly came back to his senses. He must have been possessed. What did he almost say just now? Fortunately, he stopped himself. Cold sweat broke out all over his body. Gu Jiao tilted her head and looked at him. "Do you want to eat me more?" Cough, cough. Xiao Lulang choked. His face turned red. He didn't know if it was from choking or embarrassment. Speaking of which, is it really okay for my wife to be so direct? Oh. Gu Jiao brought the bowl back and scooped up a spoonful of mung bean soup. "It's not impossible." Xiao Liulang's eyes trembled. "But this body is still too small. You have to wait for me to grow up." She said it very seriously. Then, as if she was afraid that he would lose his patience, she added, "I'm very tasty." Xiao Liulang's brain exploded. It was as if fireworks had suddenly bloomed in the night sky. His heart thumped, and he couldn't even breathe. This is too much. Does this girl know what she is saying? Of course, Gu Jiao knew. But she didn't have to pay for flirting, right? After flirting, a certain someone went to eat the mung bean soup heartlessly. Xiao Lulang. Gu Jiao slurped her soup. Halfway through, she suddenly looked up. My herbs, keep them. Xiao Lulang took a deep breath and suppressed the restlessness in his heart. He decided that he would never talk nonsense with this girl again. It was fine after flirting. She was fine, but he felt uncomfortable. Oh. Gu Jiao continued eating. The swing from Jingkong. It's fixed, Xiao Lulang said again. Gu Jiao. The box from Jingkong. Xiao Lulang, packed. Gu Jiao. The basket from Auntie Lu's house. Xiao Lulang. It's over. Gu Jiao. The salted duck eggs that Master Zhao wanted. Xiao Lulang nodded. Give it to him. She had forgotten to tell Yu and Nanny Fong about these things. She didn't expect him to be so attentive. He had been paying attention and had quietly taken care of everything. Gu Jiao rested her chin on her hand and looked at him. Her eyes were bright, as if there were thousands of stars in them. Husband, you're so nice. You're also very nice. Xiao Lulang silently said in his heart. Gu Jiao continued eating her mung bean soup. Xiao Liulong's gaze fell on a large embroidered bag wrapped in golden silk on the table and asked, What's this? Gu Jiao said, Flower petals. I picked them from the imperial garden and used them to make fresh flower cakes. I brought some back to make dried flowers. Xiao Lulang had seen her make dried flowers before, so he more or less knew the process. He said, I'll go get a sieve. Okay. Gu Jiao nodded. Xiao Lulang got up and went out. Gu Jiao was used to being alone, but it didn't feel bad to have someone to do things with. Xiao Lulang brought the sieve over, opened the embroidered bag, and poured out the flower petals inside. Suddenly, he heard a clatter and something obviously heavy fell out. Xiao Lulang looked at the jade pendant that suddenly appeared in the pile of flower petals and asked in confusion, What's this? He was about to ask if this was the jade pendant that Grandaunt gave her, but when he spoke, he found that the jade pendant was incomplete. Grandaunt wouldn't give such a thing to Gu Jiao, even if it was a piece of 1,000-year-old cold jade that was priceless. Gu Jiao didn't recognize 1,000-year-old cold jade. She only felt that this jade pendant was very exquisite, but unfortunately, it was missing a corner. She shook her head. Grandaunt didn't say that she would give me something, so I don't know where it came from. Maybe it was accidentally put in this embroidered bag. Accidentally? A piece of 1,000-year-old cold jade was accidentally put in an embroidered bag? This was not impossible. After all, Renshou Palace was rich and overbearing. Xiao Lulang paused. Did you put these flower petals in by yourself? No. Gu Jiao shook her head and said, It's Fei Chui. Who is Fei Chui? Xiao Lulang asked. He didn't go to Renshou Palace many times, so he wasn't familiar with it. Gu Jiao made an O sound and said, She's a little palace made in Renshou Palace. She's quick and clever. She serves Grandaunt, and is mainly responsible for taking care of Empress Dowager Zhuang's jewelry and clothes. I don't know if she accidentally put Grandaunt's things in the embroidered bag. I'll return it to her next time. No, I'll go. Xiao Lulang touched the piece of 1,000-year-old cold jade and said calmly, Tomorrow, I'll go to the palace to give a lecture to the crown prince. Gu Jiao said, Okay. The next day, Xiao Lulang went to the palace to teach mathematics to the crown prince. He didn't make things difficult for the crown prince today. When the time came, he let the crown prince out of school. The crown prince was puzzled. Why was this guy so kind? He didn't want him to stay? What medicine are you selling in the gourd? The crown prince asked coldly. Xiao Lulang took out a stack of papers from the teaching materials and handed it to the crown prince. If your royal highness thinks that I'm too good to you, then finish these questions. I'll come to check next time. The crown prince looked at the dozens of pages of questions that suddenly appeared, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Why did he have to ask? Xiao Lulang went to Renshou Palace. Empress Dowager Zhuang was reading the memorial. Eunuch Qin invited Xiao Lulang in and asked, Do you want me to pass the message? No, I'm just bringing some food for the Empress Dowager, Xiao Lulang said and handed the prepared food box to Eunuch Qin. These are dates from Jing Kong. He asked me to bring them to Grand Aunt no matter what. At this time, little Jing Kong, who was in class at the Imperial College, didn't know that he was being used as a tool again. Eunuch Qin took the food box with a smile. Jing Kong is very thoughtful. Xiao Lulang asked naturally. By the way, Eunuch Qin, does Renshou Palace have the Millennium Cold Jade? Can I take a look at it? What's so difficult about that? Xiao Xiuzhua is not an outsider. I'll ask someone to get it. Eunuch Qin invited Xiao Lulang to sit in the pavilion and asked someone to go to Empress Dowager Zhuang's bedroom to get the jade pendant. Xiao Lulang, please take a look. Eunuch Qin personally presented the jade pendant to Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang took the jade pendant and caressed the patterns and texture of the jade pendant. As expected of a top-notch jade, even on a scorching summer day, it still feels cold to the touch. I wonder where this jade came from. Who gave it to you? Eunuch Qin answered with a smile. The prince consort gave it to Princess Ningen. He gave her a whole piece of jade. Princess Ning, and had someone carve the jade into 3 pieces. She gave one to the Empress Dowager, one to His Majesty, and the last one to concubine Dowager Jing. Xiao Lulang thought for a moment and asked, is there no 4th piece? Eunuch Qin shook his head with a smile. No, there's no more in the palace. I can't say for sure about the outside, but it should be difficult to find one. The Millennium Cold Jade is a rare treasure. The prince consort went through a lot of trouble to get it. If it wasn't so precious, he wouldn't have given it to Princess Ningen. Why is Xiao Xiuzhua suddenly so curious about the Millennium Cold Jade? Oh, I saw it in a book and became curious. Xiao Lulang returned his grandaunt's jade pendant to Eunuch Qin. Since it was a gift from Princess Ning, and please take good care of it. Eunuch Qin took the jade pendant, wrapped it in a silk handkerchief and put it back in the box. Of course. The Empress Dowager is reluctant to wear such a precious item on her body. She has the servants store it in a secret compartment and takes it out to wipe it every day. In fact, if it wasn't a gift from Princess Ningen, the Empress Dowager would have given it to Xiao Xiuzhua without hesitation. What Eunuch Qin didn't know was that Xiao Heng once had a piece of Millennium Cold Jade. It was given to him by his mother, Princess Xinyang. However, he was no longer Xiao Heng, so that piece of Millennium Cold Jade was no longer in his hands. At this point, it was certain that this broken jade pendant didn't belong to Renshou Palace. However, how did it get into Gu Jiao's embroidered pouch? He would have to ask the palace maid named Fei Tsui. Xiao Lulang was thinking about how to call Fei Tsui over without raising suspicion when he heard Eunuch Qin say, Fei Tsui, come here and put the jade pendant back. Yes. A palace maid dressed in pink walked forward and took the brocade box from Eunuch Qin with both hands. You pour a pot of tea, Xiao Lulang said to Fei Tsui. Fei Tsui froze for a moment. Eunuch Qin only thought that Xiao Lulang was casually ordering a palace maid around, so he didn't suspect anything. If I tell you to go, then go. Yes. Fei Tsui responded and turned to leave. Xiao Lulang said, Eunuch Qin, you can go do your work. I'll sit by myself. Eunuch Qin said, okay, then this servant will go and tidy up the internal affairs. Not long after Eunuch Qin left, Fei Tsui came over with a pot of tea. Lord Xiao, please have some tea. Xiao Lulang looked at her and took out the jade pendant in his hand. Do you recognize this? I recognize it, I recognize it. Fei Tsui carefully examined it, then said, it's Miss Gu's jade pendant. Her jade pendant? Xiao Lulang frowned. Fei Tsui nodded. That's right. Yesterday, I packed Miss Gu's unfinished flower petals. This jade pendant was lying in her basket. Xiao Lulang looked at her without blinking, making sure that she wasn't lying. This jade pendant wasn't placed in Renshou Palace by someone. Someone had placed it in Gu Jiao's basket before they entered Renshou Palace. Where could it have been placed? Was it the Imperial Garden where Gu Jiao went to pick flowers? Xiao Lulang went to the Imperial Garden, but didn't find any clues. He turned around and went to Pure Flower's palace. Lord Xiao, are you here to see His Majesty? The eunuch at the door asked. No, I'm here to find Eunuch Wei. Xiao Lulang said. Please wait a moment, Lord Xiao. The eunuch went inside to report to Eunuch Wei. Eunuch Wei walked out with a horsetail whisk and said with a smile, Oh, what wind blew Xiao Xiuzhua here? His smile froze and he whispered, Is the crown prince not paying attention in class again? Xiao Lulang politely said, That's not the case. The crown prince's studies have improved, so he's always paying attention in class. Eunuch Wei let out a long sigh. That's good, that's good. I'm sure His Majesty will feel more at ease with the crown prince after hearing this. Then why is Xiao Xiuzhua here? I passed by the imperial garden just now and picked up a jade pendant. Xiao Lulang handed the broken jade pendant to Eunuch Wei. Eunuch Wei's eyes lit up when he saw the jade pendant. I finally found it. I knew it. There's no way Miss Gu picked it up. Why is Eunuch Wei like this? Xiao Lulang asked. Eunuch Wei sighed. Xiao Xiuzhua probably doesn't know this, but this is the jade pendant that Princess Ning'an gave to Imperial concubine Jing back then. Imperial concubine Jing has returned to the palace, and is currently staying in Pure Flower's palace. Yesterday, she lost her jade pendant in the Imperial Garden, and Miss Gu happened to be there at the same time. His Majesty trusted Miss Gu and didn't send anyone to interrogate her. Instead, he took out his jade pendant and gave it to Imperial concubine Jing. He smiled as he spoke. His Majesty's jade pendant was also given to him by Princess Ning'an and he treasures it very much. Now that Imperial concubine Jing's jade pendant has been found, this servant can go and retrieve His Majesty's jade pendant. A meaningful look flashed through Xiao Liulang's eyes. Eunuch Wei is saying that this jade pendant belongs to Imperial concubine Jing? Yes. Eunuch Wei nodded. Speak of the devil. Imperial concubine Jing left the palace for a stroll with Mama Kai's help. She was still wearing her nun's clothes and hat. Her face was haggard, as if she had just recovered from a serious illness, but her bearing was calm and kind. She immediately saw Eunuch Wei and Xiao Lulang at the door. Xiao Lulang also looked at her. Their eyes met, and the surroundings seemed to fall silent. Xiao Liulang's eyes were deep and calm, like a bottomless pool under the moonlight. Imperial concubine Jing had moved to the nunnery before Xiao Lulang was born, so this was the first time he saw her. He could confirm her identity because there was no other person in the palace dressed like her. Xiao Lulang calmly cupped his hands, then turned to leave Pure Flower's palace. Eunuch Wei walked over with the jade pendant in hand. Esteemed Imperial concubine, your jade pendant has been found. Xiao Xiuzhua found it in the Imperial Garden. Imperial concubine Jing looked at Xiao Liulang's back. Xiao Xiuzhua? After Xiao Lulang left the palace, he first went to Hanlin Academy for half a day's duty. He didn't immediately return to Jadewater Alley, but instead went to the Directorate's Minghui Hall. All right, you can leave. The old chancellor pardoned Zheng Sai's punishment today. Zheng Sai felt as if he had been pardoned. He looked forward to seeing Xiao Lulang as much as he despised Xiao Lulang in the past. After all, only when Xiao Lulang came would the old chancellor have no time to punish him. Xiao Lulang entered the room, and there were guards who closed the door of Minghui Hall. Have a seat, the old chancellor said. Xiao Lulang sat down across from the old chancellor. There was a short table between the two, on which there were some outstanding essays written by the directorate students. The old chancellor put down the half-corrected essay and looked at Xiao Lulang. What happened? He never visited a temple without a reason. Xiao Lulang told him about the jade pendant, and the old chancellor's expression turned serious. You suspect that there's something wrong with Imperial concubine Jing? As expected of a master and disciple, there was an indescribable tacit understanding between them. Xiao Lulang didn't mention anything about his suspicions toward Imperial concubine Jing. He only told the old chancellor everything that had happened. But who was the old chancellor? He was a 10,000-year-old green tea and a white lotus, so there was no need to pretend to be pure in front of his disciple. Xiao Lulang asked, "What kind of person is Imperial concubine Jing in teacher's eyes?" "Naturally, she's a good person," the old chancellor said without hesitation. However, his past knowledge might not be accurate. For example, he was certain that Zhuang Jin's was a bad person, but in the end he found out that she wasn't. Perhaps he thought that imperial concubine Jing was a good person, but she wasn't that kind either. He would never admit that he was biased toward Zhuang Jin's. You may know a person for a long time without understanding their heart. The old chancellor had a deep understanding of this, saying after the incident with Zhuang Jin's, "How's her relationship with the Empress Dowager?" Xiao Luling asked. The old chancellor smiled faintly. They were very close in the past. She was Zhuang Jin's only friend in the palace, and the person Zhuang Jin's trusted the most was her. I still remember that there was one time when she, then imperial concubine Jing, was made a scapegoat in order to overthrow Zhuang Jin's, and Zhuang Jin's almost killed me. Zhuang Jin's wasn't even that angry when I caused her to be thrown into the cold palace. Zhuang Jin's didn't have any children, and she treated her son and daughter as her own. They were Princess Ning'an and His Majesty. Imperial concubine Jing's maternal family was also supported by Zhuang Jin's. At this point, the old chancellor sighed. Later on, when the late emperor passed away and His Majesty ascended the throne, imperial concubine Jing went to the nunnery to get her hair cut, and became a nun. The two of them didn't interact much after that. Xiao Lulang asked suspiciously, "Why did she go to the nunnery? Did she go on her own accord?" The old chancellor shook his head. "No, it was Zhuang Jin's imperial decree." Xiao Lulang pondered and said, "His Majesty definitely didn't agree." The old chancellor nodded. "You guessed it right. His Majesty didn't agree, but Zhuang Jin's covered the sky with one hand. His Majesty only managed to tie with Zhuang Jin's after painstakingly working for so many years. His Majesty, who had just ascended the throne, wasn't Zhuang Jin's opponent at all. The relationship between His Majesty and Zhuang Jin's broke down because of this matter." Digression: a new month has arrived. Let's throw in all the monthly votes and recommendation tickets. The author is working very hard to save up the manuscript and counting down to the next chapter. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111634736. HTML Genius memorized this site's address in a second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 332. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. The old chancellor continued. Not many people know about this. It's rumored that concubine Jing invited herself to the nunnery. I also heard from His Majesty that Zhuang Jin's expelled her closest friend from the palace in order to monopolize power. Xiao Luling frowned. His Majesty must think that the Empress Dowager's kindness to him and concubine Jing was a carefully planned scheme. The Empress Dowager only wants a puppet. The old chancellor agreed. Yes, His Majesty does have this idea. In fact, it's not just His Majesty who thinks so. Even the Empress Dowager's maternal family, the Zhuang family, thinks that the Empress Dowager has been acting for so many years. Everyone in the world felt injustice for concubine Jing and the emperor. No one cared about Zhuang Jin's gradually disheartened heart. No one asked if there was a secret behind Zhuang Jin's betrayal of her close friend. Whoever was weak was right. Zhuang Jin's strength was destined to make people fear her, hate her, fear her, and wish they could destroy her. No one would cherish her. All the bad things would be easily blamed on her. Who told her to ignore the rules? Who told her to monopolize the imperial power? Dusk was setting in the west. The evening light fell on the cornice of the Renshou Palace, creating a dazzling golden light. Empress Dowager Zhuang had finished dealing with nearly half of the government affairs, and her entire body was filled with silent exhaustion. The days in the palace weren't as leisurely as outsiders thought. There were mountains of memorials, endless political affairs, and endless disputes. Everything ruthlessly destroyed one's will. Empress Dowager. Eunuch Qin slowly walked in and tenderly offered her a cup of flower tea. Rest for a while and eat first. It's the same to look at these memorials tomorrow. There will be memorials tomorrow. Empress Dowager Zhuang perked up and picked up another one. I'm not hungry, Eunuch Qin said earnestly. Even if you're not hungry, you should eat something. If you tire yourself out, Miss Gu will be distressed. Empress Dowager Zhuang got angry at the mention of this. She coldly glared at him. Don't go to her for small things in the future. Don't think that I don't dare to chop off your head. I have 4 trusted eunuchs by my side. Don't forget how the first 3 died. They were all beheaded by you. Eunuch Qin touched the neck on his shoulder and said resentfully, Yes, I won't do it again. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. The little palace maid Fei Tsue rushed in excitedly. Empress Dowager Zhuang was annoyed. Anyone who provoked her had to die. Empress Dowager Zhuang was not a good person. She had killed people who did not need to be killed. She was so vicious. Drag him out. Just as she was about to say the word, Fei Tsue gasped for breath. Xiao Darren is here. The 2 words death by flogging had their own thoughts. They slipped into Empress Dowager Zhuang's stomach. Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes. Let him in. Eunuch Qin secretly smiled. Xiao Lulang entered the study in the side hall. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the booklet and asked casually, Didn't he leave? Why are you back? Listen, listen, listen. What kind of angry tone is this? Eunuch Qin, who was outside the door, almost laughed. Xiao Xiuzhu came to deliver something in the morning and left without seeing anyone. Xiao Lulang said, I came to eat. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. Is there no food at home? Why do you have to come to my place to eat? Xiao Lulang nodded frankly. Yes, there is no food. He had become shameless. It was obvious that he had been led astray by that old guy Huxian. Empress Dowager Zhuang narrowed her eyes angrily. Eunuch Qin coughed lightly and said, Empress Dowager, shall I have someone set the table? Thank you, Eunuch Qin. Xiao Lulang turned and said to Eunuch Qin. Yes. Eunuch Qin happily agreed and left happily. Empress Dowager Zhuang gritted her teeth. Good, each one of you is a traitor. Is Runshou Palace no longer surnamed Zhuang? Dinner was set in Lingxiang Pavilion, which was in the same side hall as the study. Empress Dowager Zhuang had no intention of eating. Xiao Lulang helplessly said with a trace of grievance, I am hungry, great aunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang rolled her eyes again and reluctantly put down the booklet. She went to Lingxiang Pavilion with Xiao Lulang. Eunuch Qin did not know that Xiao Lulang had come. Some of the dishes were freshly cooked. He had been to Bishui Alley so many times that he knew Xiao Liulang's taste. Empress Dowager Zhuang dismissed the servants serving the food. Xiao Lulang gave Empress Dowager Zhuang some vegetables with his chopsticks. Empress Dowager Zhuang frowned. I don't eat this. I want to eat. Xiao Lulang gave her another piece of pork belly, but he removed the fat part. Empress Dowager Zhuang's face was as black as charcoal. Are you here to eat with me? I think you are here to die. Empress Dowager Zhuang was very angry. The consequences would be severe. Xiao Lulang said gloomily, When I was young, I did not eat with my grandmother. She did not like my mother, so she did not like me. Empress Dowager Zhuang's anger burned halfway and was extinguished. Empress Dowager Zhuang had heard about the relationship between Princess Xinyang and old Madame Xiao. Old Madame Xiao originally liked the daughter of a large family, who was gentle and quiet. But who would have thought that Marquis Xianping would marry a big Buddha, who could not be beaten or scolded? When they met, they had to salute her. Old Madame Xiao was very angry. It was said that she did not like Princess Xinyang's son very much. Instead, she loved the 2 concubine-born grandsons in the residence. Xiao Lulang did not care about this at all. He said it just to play the sympathy card. Sure enough, Empress Dowager Zhuang felt that someone was pitiful and did not want to disappoint someone. With a dark face, she ate the vegetable leaf with disgust and sullenness. Xiao Liulang's lips curved imperceptibly. After that, Xiao Lulang made up a lot of miserable days under old Madame Zhao's hands. He successfully coaxed the Empress Dowager to eat all the food she did not want to eat. When Empress Dowager Zhuang reacted, she found that she had eaten half a bowl more than usual. This was her normal appetite in Baishui Alley. But after returning to the palace, her appetite had decreased by more than half. She had lost weight. It was a simple meal, but even a fool could see that Empress Dowager Zhuang ate more comfortably than usual. After eating, Xiao Lulang was not in a hurry to go back. Instead, he went to the library the Empress Dowager had built for him. The library was across from Empress Dowager Zhuang's study, separated by a small garden. Eunuch Qin very considerately opened the window. Empress Dowager Zhuang only needed to turn her head to see Xiao Lulang immersed in reading by the window of the library. Empress Dowager Zhuang's irritable mood suddenly calmed down. The palace was lonely, especially at night. It was a loneliness that could make one go crazy, helpless, and unable to escape no matter how hard one tried. Empress Dowager Zhuang had lived in the palace for decades and never felt that it was her home. But at this moment, looking at the youth's figure and feeling his silent companionship, Empress Dowager Zhuang felt a tranquility and peace that she had never felt before. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the memorials for a while. It was late at night and she still had a small pile to read, but she did not intend to read it. She said to Eunuch Qin, "Tell him that Ijia is going to rest. He should also go back." Eunuch Qin smiled and said, "Yes." He tried to persuade her, but the Empress Dowager refused to listen. Only Xiao Darren had a way. "Wait." Empress Dowager Zhuang stopped Eunuch Qin. "Send 2 secret guards to secretly escort him along the way. Caution is the parent of safety. He is too close to Ijia. Ijia is worried that someone will harm him." The moon was dark and the wind was strong. As for returning to Baishui Alley, there was nothing to worry about with Jiao Jiao and Gu Yan's 2 secret guards. "Yes." Eunuch Qin asked someone to prepare a carriage and personally sent Xiao Lulang to the entrance of the palace. He also ordered 2 palace experts to follow along the way. In the forest not far away, several figures flashed by. After a quarter of an hour, in the dark room, one could not see his fingers. A man in black said, "Master, there are experts from Rinshou Palace following along the way. We were unable to succeed." The figure in the dark waved his hand faintly. "Leave." The next day, Xiao Lulang had a rest day. There were no classes at the Imperial College. Xiao Lulang slept late at night and woke up a little later in the morning. Little Jing Kong was already up. He went to the backyard to wash up and water his sweetheart. When Xiao Lulang dressed neatly and went to the backyard, he was surprised to find 2 marquises in the yard, Marquis Xianping and Marquis Dingen. Marquis Xianping came to accept little Jing Kong as his disciple. He thought that as long as he accepted him as his disciple, he could openly enter the inner circle of Baishui Alley. At that time, investigating Xiao Liulang's background and pleasing his daughter-in-law would not be a problem. But coincidentally Marquis Ding and also came to accept little Jing Kong as his disciple. In fact, he did not leave last night because he fainted from fright. It was a blessing in disguise that he stayed in Baishui Alley for the night. When he woke up, he already knew that the child was his and had nothing to do with Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping appeared here only because he liked the little monk and wanted to accept him as his disciple. If it was in the past, Marquis Gu would not dare to compete with Marquis Xianping. But this was related to whether he could stay in Baishui Alley. That's right, he thought about it. Yao Shi was pregnant and the situation was special. If she was unwilling to return to the Marquis's mansion, he would stay with her temporarily. He would make other plans after the child was born. For his wife and child, Marquis Gu would do anything. "Even if you are a first-grade Marshal Marquis and your status is much higher than mine, I will not back down." Marquis Xianping put his hands in his sleeves. The weather was so hot, but he was still able to hold it in. It was truly admirable. He casually said, "Since it is like this, then let's have a fair competition and see who has the ability. Little monk, what do you think?" Little Jing Kong seriously thought about it. Good. He took out 2 small cards and scribbled a few words. Then he moved a small stool over and sat on it cutely. He began to watch from the sidelines. Marquis Gu coldly snorted and asked, "What does Marquis Xianping want to compete with me in?" Marquis Xianping raised an eyebrow. "Face." Marquis Gu, who almost choked to death. How could he be so shameless? Little Jing Kong raised the tile in his right hand. Marquis Xiao wins. It was clear that the bad brother-in-law's father was better looking than the Jiao Jiao's father. But Jiao Jiao was the best looking and did not accept any rebuttal. Marquis Gu did not even have time to react before the competition started, and he lost. How could he complain? He clenched his teeth and showed his killer move. Let's compete in reciting poems. Marquis Xianping. F***ck. So heartless. Although Marquis Gu's calligraphy and painting were not satisfactory, he still had a little more knowledge than Marquis Xianping. Little Jing Kong had 5 poems and Marquis Gu could recite 2 while Marquis Xianping could not recite a single one. Little Jing Kong raised the tile in his left hand. Marquis Gu wins. However, Marquis Gu was not so lucky. Marquis Xianping was not knowledgeable, but his other abilities were not for show. Marquis Gu was crushed miserably. Even in the martial arts competition, Marquis Xianping was clearly injured, but he was still defeated by Marquis Gu. Marquis Gu lost badly. 2 hours later, the ambitious Marquis Gu finally broke down. He spread himself out, rolled his eyes, stuck out his tongue, and collapsed on the stairs, as if he had nothing to live for. Awesome. Awesome. Little Jing Kong sat on a small stool, straightened his little back, and clapped his little hands. Marquis Xianping smiled and said proudly, "Okay, I won. You can worship me as your teacher." Little Jing Kong tilted his head and said seriously, "But I already have a teacher. I can't worship you as my teacher anymore. A good disciple does not serve a second teacher. Wasn't it said that a good woman does not serve a second husband?" Marquis Xianping frowned and started to doubt his life. Because he was not knowledgeable, he might have remembered wrongly. The original saying was indeed that a good disciple does not serve a second teacher. But this was not the point. The point was that this little brat played him again. Marquis Xianping gritted his teeth. "Since you can't worship me as your teacher, why were you so agitated just now?" Little Jing Kong spread his hands and said innocently, "I only said that I wanted to watch you compete. I didn't say that I wanted to worship you as my teacher after the competition. You said it yourself. I didn't agree." Marquis Xianping had a toothache. "Stinky little monk, you're asking for it." Marquis Xianping couldn't always fall in one place. If the little monk wanted to compete with him, he would have to wait another 500 years. He snorted and said in a mighty and domineering manner, "I don't care. You have to accept it whether you like it or not." Chang Jing. Chang Jing rushed in with a whoosh sound. Then he grabbed Little Jing Kong and carried him on his shoulder. Little Jing Kong's small arms and legs fluttered. "Aya, what are you doing?" Marquis Xianping flicked his wide sleeves. "Take him away. Go worship your ancestors." "I don't want to." A certain little monk chattered for a while, but was still mercilessly captured by a certain bad monkey. There was a class at Qinghe Academy today, so Guyan didn't know what happened at home. Lu Quan came to take Gu Xiaoshan to Master Lu and Nanxiang to learn martial arts, so he didn't go. He was lazy again. On one hand, he didn't have much interest and ambition. On the other hand, his body was indeed weaker than ordinary people. Sitting in the carriage on a hot summer day was too stuffy for him. He leisurely walked back. After a few steps, an old but hale and hearty old man with a treasured sword walked towards him. "What a coincidence," the old man said with a smile. "Oh, it is." Guyan knew who he was. It was his grandfather, Gu Chao. He was recognized the first time he came to the academy. He was only 4 years old when he left the capital. They hadn't seen each other for 11 years, so the old marquis thought that he didn't remember him. In fact, Guyan didn't remember him, but the old marquis's face was too typical. They looked alike for 3 generations. Moreover, he found that as long as the old marquis approached him, his secret guards would stay far away. Guyan might not be good at studying, but he was a real villain. The old marquis wanted to see his grandson, but he couldn't put down his pride, so he had to meet Guyan several times. He thought that Guyan didn't recognize him. "Aren't you going to learn martial arts today?" the old marquis asked. "It's hot," Guyan said. "Are you here to see your grandson again?" the old marquis said embarrassedly. "Ah, yes." Guyan asked knowingly. Have you seen him? The old Marquis looked at Gu Yan and laughed dryly. Yes, I have. Oh. Gu Yan raised his eyebrows. Do you still want to eat cold jelly today? The old Marquis was stunned at first, but then he nodded quickly. Yes, yes. The two had eaten cold jelly once before. Gu Yan found that the old Marquis liked it very much. Gu Yan didn't have a bad impression of his grandfather. In his impression, his grandfather treated him well, and also his mother well. When he and his mother moved to the farm, his grandfather gave him 2 secret guards. He had a seizure in the middle of the night several times, and everyone was asleep. If the secret guards hadn't detected the abnormality in time, he might have died. After eating the cold jelly with mint, Gu Yan felt refreshed. He touched his stomach contentedly and said, You treated me last time, so I'll treat you this time. Courtesy demands reciprocity. The old Marquis said, No need. Gu Yan waved his hand. It's all right. Although I don't have much money, I work part-time every day and earn some pocket money. I can still afford to treat you to cold jelly. The old Marquis frowned when he heard this. His grandson had actually fallen to the point of working part-time for others to earn money. Gu Chong, that bastard, was a father. Didn't he give his son a monthly allowance? What about your father? The old Marquis asked. Gu Yan sighed. My father, he forced me to move back every day. I didn't want to, so he cut off my monthly allowance. I told you that I was born prematurely weak and suffered from heart disease. My sister really worked hard to raise me. Could it be that the girl became a doctor for her own brother? He blamed her wrongly. Digression. Good night, sweet dreams. The latest chapter of this book is not finished. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet can be found here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111600266. HTML Genius remembered the website address. www.zhhbqg.com. Bikugo mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 333. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel is more complete and updated faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. In the end, the old Duke didn't let Gu Yan pay the bill. He took out his money bag and took out a silver coin from it and handed it to the waiter. However, perhaps he took it out too quickly. He brought out a red braided pipa knot. Gu Yan quickly picked up the pipa knot. This pipa knot looked a little old, and its color was faded and the edges were frayed. It was hard to imagine that such an unyielding man would have such a thing in his money bag. Is this a gift from your soulmate? Gu Yan asked. It was obvious that it was a gift from a woman, but it couldn't be the old madam in the mansion. He and old Madame Gu appeared to be in harmony, but were actually at odds, so he wouldn't wear something she gave him. Cough, no, don't talk nonsense. The old Duke put the pipa knot back into the money bag. Gu Yan didn't believe him. He asked curiously, I didn't know that you have a soulmate. Where is she now? She definitely wasn't in the mansion. The old concubines in the mansion had already been cleaned up by old Madame Gu. The old Duke had never mentioned his feelings to others all these years. How much bitterness had been bottled up in the bottom of his heart. To be honest, he had a little desire to pour it out. He hesitated for a moment and said, It's a friend of mine. He left it at my place. I'm going to return it to him. My friend? What a familiar beginning. Gu Yan, who had read all the romance books of the old chancellor, expressed that he understood very well. He raised his handsome little eyebrows. Then where is your friend's soulmate now? The old Duke sighed sadly. She became a monk. Why did she become a monk? Gu Yan asked. My husband passed away. She couldn't help it. But the old Marquis paused for a moment before continuing. Maybe it's because he wants to see my friend again in his lifetime. I didn't know that the old man was so popular with women. Guyan didn't ask about the reason why she couldn't help herself. His focus was on the last sentence. He said thoughtfully, "It seems that this confidant is deeply in love with your friend." The old Marquis looked down at the concentric knot in his hand and said, "It's a pity that we met too late. I wish we could have met before marriage." Guyan said, "But isn't her husband dead? Moreover, she also became a nun because of your friend. Don't tell me you. Ahem, don't tell me your friend really can't tell?" The Marquis frowned. "You mean?" Guyan said, "What I mean is, she may have been waiting for your friend to take her away." "Take her away?" The old Marquis was shocked. This child really wouldn't stop until he was shocked to death. Guyan nodded. "That's right. Let me ask you, why does your friend think that she became a nun to see him? She had said that herself, hadn't she? Or, she let your friend feel her affection for your friend?" "Yes." The Marquis nodded in agreement. Guyan slapped the table. "That's it. She's a woman. Showing a little affection is already her limit. She can't just say that you're going to elope with me. We men have to take the initiative for this kind of thing." The Marquis was so shocked by Guyan's words that he forgot to say that he was only 15 and still wet behind the ears. He couldn't be considered a real man. This is too rebellious. How did this child grow up? He was even braver than his 3 older brothers. Guyan said, "What's so rebellious about it? If you like her, then fight for her." The Marquis hesitated. "What if she's not willing?" "If she's not willing, then it means that she doesn't have your friend in her heart." Guyan patted his grandfather's shoulder and analyzed for him with his experience of reading romance novels. "She's already a nun. What's there to be afraid of? If she's not willing to elope, then there's only one truth. She doesn't like your friend. She's just using your friend's feelings for her." Gu Jiao was busy in the medical hall all morning. She finally had some free time in the afternoon. It was rare that she didn't have to deal with the gunpowder, so she lay down on the rattan chair under the tree to cool off. Li Wanwan was practicing her zither across the wall. She was already used to practicing for Gu Jiao at this time every day, but she didn't know if Gu Jiao was here every time. Her zither skills had improved a lot compared to last year, but she didn't know if she had something on her mind today, but she was playing absent-mindedly. "You played wrong again," Gu Jiao said lightly. "Ah." Li Wanwan's face turned pale. She didn't expect that the girl would be here today. After all, the girl hadn't listened to her practice for several days. She quickly adjusted her expression and said, I'll play it again properly." The result was still not satisfactory. She was so nervous that her palms were sweating. It was very strange. The other person clearly wasn't her teacher, but she was more nervous than when she was in front of her teacher. "Sorry, I should have been more focused." She bit her lip and said in a low voice, "I might not be able to come next month. I'm getting married." She wasn't that old, only 16. This dynasty wasn't like the previous dynasty. Women getting married at the age of 18 or 19 wouldn't be criticized by others. But this also depended on the situation. The daughters of wealthy families could afford it, but a girl from a poor family like her had to get married early. She heard that the girls in the countryside got married even earlier. Thinking about it, she was considered lucky. She had made it to the age of 16, and was able to attend a girls' school for half a year. Because of that school, she met the girl and received so much guidance from the girl. Gu Jiao said, "Oh, in the future, no one would play for her. When would little Jiangli learn how to play the zither? I've been wanting to say goodbye to the girl for the past few days. I want to thank the girl. My biggest achievement in the girls' school was to meet the girl. My family originally wanted me to drop out of school after the new year, but the song that the girl changed for me let me win the favor of musician Xia. Under his insistence, my family let me study for another half a year." Li Wanwan's cheeks slightly reddened as she said, "Speaking of which, this marriage is also thanks to the girl. I played the zither well, and was heard by a young master of an aristocratic family. He came to my father to ask for my hand in marriage." Gu Jiao didn't see her expression, but it wasn't difficult to hear her longing for marriage from her words. It seemed that she also liked that young master. "Girl, can I give you something? You taught me so much." If I just leave like this, I'll feel bad. Please be sure to accept my gift of thanks, young lady. It's not anything valuable. It's just a small medicine bag. Please accept it. Gu Jiao answered lightly. Li Wanwan was delighted. She took out the medicine bag that had been rusty for several nights from her wide sleeve. In case it was too light to throw, she put a few dates in it. Girl, catch. She threw the medicine bag over the courtyard wall. Gu Jiao caught it with one hand. Thank you. Li Wanwan smiled brightly. It's my pleasure. Then I'll leave now. In the last few days, I'll try to play more songs for you. If I don't come one day, then I won't come again. She suddenly felt a little disappointed when she finished speaking. She didn't want to leave the girl. She didn't know if she would be able to meet such a teacher and friend in the future. She put the zither away, picked up the zither case and left. Bang! A small brocade pouch fell right on top of her zither case. She was slightly startled. Girl? A wedding gift, Gu Jiao said. Li Wanwan smiled happily like a child. Girl gu. Someone wants a doctor to treat them. They say the situation is very critical. Xiao Sanzi hurriedly ran over. How critical? Gu Jiao asked. Xiao Sanzi said in fear. The hand is broken. It's severed. It's a woodcutter. This was a major operation, so Gu Jiao had to go in person. Okay, I'll go. Gu Jiao carried the small basket on her back and had Xiao Sanzi drive the carriage. They went to the mansion on Qinglu Street that the servant had mentioned. As they walked, Xiao Sanzi felt that something was wrong. This isn't the way to Qinglu Street. The servant rode in front and didn't turn around when he heard this. He said, when I came, there was a road being repaired. We have to take a detour here. What's wrong? Is the road wrong? Gu Jiao asked indifferently. It's a bit of a detour, Xiao Sanzi muttered. Gu Jiao lifted the curtain and looked at the scene along the street. Not every street in the capital was bustling with activity. Some of the more remote areas were very desolate. This was an old street. There weren't many pedestrians, and there weren't many shops. Further ahead was an official road with wheat fields on both sides. That's right, there were fields in the capital, but they were all in more remote areas. It's really a good place for an ambush. This was an instinct that she had developed as an assassin in her previous life. When she saw a location, she would always subconsciously judge if it was suitable for a crime. However, as soon as this thought flashed through her mind, she paused. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. It was an assassin's intuition. Gu Jiao put down the curtain and lifted the curtain in front of her. She shot out a silver needle and pierced the manservant leading the way in front. The manservant let out a blood-curdling scream and fell off the horse. Miss Guyu, Xiao Sanzi was stunned. Turn around. Gu Jiao didn't have time to explain. Xiao Sanzi was indeed someone who had seen the world with Gu Jiao. He didn't drop the ball at such a crucial moment. If his second boss was here, he would have already pinched his philtrum and fainted. He didn't ask why they turned around. He believed in Gu Jiao. Unfortunately, it was too late. The men in black who were hiding under the ridge rushed towards Gu Jiao's carriage like arrows. Each of them held a large knife in their hands. Their eyes were sharp and murderous. Gu Jiao didn't need to count to know that there were 10 of them. They really thought highly of her, sending so many people to kill her. You go first. Gu Jiao jumped off the carriage. Xiao Sanzi didn't refuse. He knew his place. He didn't know martial arts, and he would only be a burden to Miss Gu if he stayed. It was better to report this to the officials. Perhaps they could get help for Miss Gu. Of course, it would also be good if he could lure a few assassins away. For Miss Gu, he would risk it all. Come, assassins. He pulled on the reins and looked back. Not a single one had caught up. Gu Jiao was surrounded by the men in black. She glanced at them coldly. Come at me all at once. It's too tiring to come one by one. The men in black looked at her with disdain and rushed towards Gu Jiao with their knives. I'll use you guys to test my gunpowder. Gu Jiao narrowed her eyes. Unfortunately, there were only 3 of them. She didn't know how powerful they were. In her previous life, she had played with a small cannon that didn't need to be lit. It would explode when thrown on the ground. The black gunpowder she made was similar to the small cannon. but it was more powerful. Gu Jiao took out a small piece of gunpowder and threw it at one of the men in black. There was a loud bang and the man in black fainted. It was SOSO. Gu Jiao wasn't too satisfied, but she wasn't too disappointed either. She had blown herself up into the sky mainly because she had used a lot of gunpowder. It wasn't too bad that such a small piece of gunpowder could make someone faint. This group of assassins had never seen such a strange hidden weapon. It was powerful and powerful. Everyone was shocked by the explosion. Everyone looked at Gu Jiao with fear. Gu Jiao curled her lips coldly. She snatched one of the men's knives and sent him flying with a punch. The rest of the men finally reacted and rushed towards Gu Jiao again. However, the explosion just now had destroyed their morale. Gu Jiao dealt with them quickly. After the last assassin fell, Gu Jiao clapped her hands calmly. However, no one had expected that a dangerous aura would suddenly approach them. What a terrifying aura. Gu Jiao's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't avoid it. The man was too fast. In the nick of time, a sword slashed down and blocked the man's attack. He stretched out his other arm and grabbed Gu Jiao's waist and quickly retreated with her. "Wait for me here," Gu Chongqing said and charged towards the man with his sword. This was Gu Jiao's first time seeing Gu Chongqing in a real fight. He was much stronger than she had imagined, but he still wasn't a match for the other party. This was a person that even Gu Jiao had a trace of fear towards. This person's strength was much stronger than her in her previous life. How could this be? Who exactly was he? Gu Chongqing was hit by the other party's palm. She used her sword to stabilize herself. Gu Jiao took out the last two gunpowder and threw it at the other party. The man thought it was a normal hidden weapon. He slashed down with his sword and heard two loud bangs. It was unknown whether the man was shocked or shocked by the gunpowder. Anyway, he retreated a few steps. His cold eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. He didn't faint from the explosion of two gunpowder. He was indeed an expert among experts. Gu Jiao put her hand into her pouch to continue digging. In fact, there was no more gunpowder left. She only hoped to scare the other party. Fortunately, she managed to scare him. The other party coldly glanced at Gu Jiao and used his qinggong to leave. Gu Chongqing looked in the direction the other party left. Suddenly, he clutched his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. Gu Jiao quickly went forward and checked his pulse. Gu Chongqing waved his hand. "I'm fine. It's just a little internal injury. I'll be fine after some rest." As he spoke, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth with his knuckles. He put his sword back into its scabbard and looked at Gu Jiao to ask, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Gu Jiao shook her head. Gu Chongqing whistled and his horse galloped over. The brother and sister got on their horses. These people. Gu Jiao looked at the black-clothed men who had fainted on the ground. Gu Chongqing seemed to be very experienced. You can't get anything out of them. That person just now is the key. These people are just some small fries in the Jianghu. They work for money and don't even know the identity of their sponsor. Gu Jiao nodded. The brother and sister returned to Jadewater Alley. The old chancellor had just returned from his duty at the Imperial College. He frowned when he saw Gu Chongqing's pale face. What happened? Gu Chongqing looked at Gu Jiao and said, "We encountered a group of assassins." Assassins? The old chancellor's gaze swept across the two of them. "You or Jiao Jiao?" "They tried to assassinate me," Gu Jiao said honestly. She jumped down from the horse and gave her hand to Gu Chongqing to help him down. The old chancellor looked around and pulled the horse's reins, saying to the two of them, "Follow me." "You're saying that person's martial arts might not even be able to defeat your grandfather?" The old chancellor frowned deeply after hearing the whole story. "That's impossible. How could your grandfather not be able to defeat an assassin with his skills? That person's scent is very..." Gu Jiao wanted to say familiar because she smelled the scent of her own kind on that person. That person was a killing machine just like her in her previous life. Weird. Gu Chongqing finished the sentence for Gu Jiao. He's different from all the experts I've seen before. His martial arts are different, his inner energy is also different, and he has a tattoo on his face. That person was wearing a mask, but Gu Jiao threw out that strange concealed weapon and blew up a piece of the mask. He saw half of the tattoo. What kind of tattoo? The old chancellor took a pen and paper. Draw it for me. Gu Chongqing drew half of the tail. The old chancellor's expression changed. It's the dragon shadow guard. What's the dragon shadow guard? Gu Jiao asked. Gu Chongqing had already understood and his expression turned grave. It's the late emperor's men of sacrifice. The old chancellor pondered. In order to deal with Zhuang Jin's, the late emperor secretly trained a group of men of sacrifice. The youngest was only 5 years old, and he passed them to His Majesty before he died. Gu Chongqing frowned. His Majesty wants to kill Jiao Jiao? The old chancellor waved his hand. He won't. His Majesty dotes on Jiao Jiao and won't hurt her. His Majesty once transferred the Dragon Shadow Guard to another person to prevent her from being persecuted by Zhuang Jin's. Gu Chongqing was astonished. That person is, the old chancellor said seriously, concubine Jing. Gu Chongqing sucked in a cold breath. Digression. The old chancellor, I, the #1 green tea in Zhao country, will never admit that someone is better at tea than me. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111572780. HTML Genius remembered the website address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion Mobile Reading Website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 334. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. How could it be her? Gu Chongqing said in disbelief. She assassinated Jiao Jiao. Then what about the matter between the marshal's residence and the marquis residence? Old Chancellor knew about this matter. After all, when Gu Chongqing broke out of prison to visit Gu Yan, it was Old Chancellor who let Gu Chongqing into the house. Old Chancellor said, although there's no evidence for that matter, looking at the motive, it does seem to be her. Other than her, there's probably no one who is so anxious to see His Majesty and Empress Dowager reconcile. Even if the Zhuang family wanted to cover the sky with one hand, if Zhuang Jin's and His Majesty had a harmonious relationship, they didn't think it was a bad thing. Instead, if they could win over His Majesty and let His Majesty give more benefits to the Zhuang family, Grand Tutor Zhuang would also be happy. It's just that His Majesty never boarded the Zhuang family's pirate ship. Old Chancellor continued. I guess she's still brooding about the Empress Dowager's position. She wants to be the Empress Dowager, and she wants to get rid of Zhuang Jin's. It's just that she hides herself so well that even though she's the biggest suspect, no one suspects her. Something flashed through Gu Chongqing's eyes. He clenched his fists and his eyes were cold. I'm afraid she has her eyes on Lulang recently. Old Chancellor hesitated for a moment and still told them about the jade pendant. Furthermore, back then when Zhao Du's young marquis was poisoned by Empress Dowager, I suspect it's also her doing. Gu Jiaojiao's eyes also turned cold. Old Chancellor saw the siblings looking like they were going to enter the palace to execute the person on the spot and hurriedly advised. Don't be impulsive, don't enter the palace to kill. With the previous emperor's men of sacrifice, you won't be able to kill her, and you might even get injured. Secondly, even if you kill her, you won't be justified. His Majesty won't forgive you, and the laws of this dynasty won't forgive you. Gu Chongqing said coldly. Are we going to let her be free? The old chancellor chuckled and said, to deal with such a person, of course we have to take an unconventional approach. How are you going to do this? Gu Chongqing asked. The old chancellor smiled mysteriously. Of course, to give him a taste of his own medicine. Giving someone a taste of their own medicine was easy to say, but it was not easy to do it. especially this old White Lotus who had hidden himself so deeply that even the old Chancellor felt inferior to him. However, the old Chancellor always refused to admit defeat. You can be more knowledgeable than me and have a better official position than me, but you can't beat me in tea. Life is like a play. Let's compare our acting skills. Gu Jiao silently touched her small basket. The old Chancellor asked, "It's so late, where are you going?" "To see Grandaunt," Gu Jiao said without changing her expression. The old Chancellor said, "Put down the basket." Gu Jiao blinked and put down the small basket. "Take out the dagger." Gu Jiao took out a black iron dagger with a resentful expression. The other three. Gu Jiao then took out the 3 daggers hidden on her body. "Take out the sack. Take out the hidden weapon. Take out the poison needle. And that crackling thing you made." Gu Jiao curled her lips. "I don't have that." The old Chancellor said, "Poisonous bug. Poisonous snake." Gu Chongqing's temples throbbed when he heard that. "You're a girl. How can you store so many dangerous things in your small basket? You even have poisonous snakes." Gu Jiao took out everything in the small basket, leaving only a small medicine box. The medicine box couldn't hide living things or things that didn't belong to it. Otherwise, it would disappear. Gu Jiao had tried this before. The old Chancellor knew this girl too well. If he didn't stop her today, she would directly enter the palace and put old concubine Jing in a sack. However, the risk was too great. He wouldn't allow her to take the risk. Gu Chongqing automatically ignored his sister's basket of strange things and looked at the old Chancellor. "Chancellor Hua, what do you plan to do?" The old Chancellor stroked his beard. Well, he had a plan, but he lacked a tool. This person needed to be trusted by the Emperor and be able to enter the palace easily. The second point alone wasn't too difficult for him. However, ever since the Emperor found out that he was his father for some time, the Emperor had a lot of resentment towards him. He didn't trust him as much as before. The old Chancellor looked up and sighed. It wasn't easy to be a minister. While he was sighing, the sound of horses' hooves and the sound of wheels turning came from the alley. The sound stopped at the door next door. Then the whole alley heard little Jingkong's angry roar. "Ah! I don't want to go out with you anymore. It's not fun. It's not fun at all." The old Chancellor muttered. What happened? Who did he go out with? Why is he so angry? Gu Jiao and Gu Chongqing didn't know either. The 3 of them went out. Little Jing Kong jumped down from a tall carriage and stomped his feet angrily. "Jing Kong!" Gu Jiao called. When little Jing Kong saw Gu Jiao walking out of the young master's residence, he pouted his lips aggrievedly and ran over, throwing himself into Gu Jiao's arms. Gu Jiao squatted down, wiped the sweat on the little guy's forehead and touched his collar. His clothes were all soaked in sweat. Marquis Xianping came down from the carriage and looked at the little guy with raised eyebrows. "I took you to such a high-end restaurant to eat, but you didn't appreciate it." "Marquis." Gu Chongqing cupped his hands in greeting. "Yes." Marquis Xianping responded lightly. Little Jing Kong was especially angry. "You're still talking about it. Such a big restaurant. There were so many good dishes, but you only ordered an egg for me." Marquis Xianping coughed softly. "That was an egg braised with abalone juice. It's very expensive. Besides, can a child like you eat so much? Didn't I take you to row a boat?" "What kind of boat is that?" "It's leaking. I scooped water all the way." "Oh." Little Jing Kong felt wronged. "Jiao Jiao, my arms are sore. There were boats that cost 20 copper coins, boats that cost 50 copper coins, and even boats with black awnings that cost 1 tael of silver." Marquis Xianping rented the cheapest boat. It didn't have a shed, and the bottom of the boat leaked when he rowed halfway. In the end, it was unknown whether he was rowing the boat or the boat was rowing the man. Gu Jiao picked up little Jing Kong. Little Jing Kong lay in her arms and sobbed. What a soul-stirring day this was. He didn't want to go out with this stingy monkey anymore. "I'll take Jing Kong in first," Gu Jiao said and turned to enter the house. Gu Chongqing and the old Chancellor looked at Marquis Xianping with a complicated expression. "I know you're stingy, but you don't have to be so stingy." Marquis Xianping coughed softly and said, "Why are you looking at me like that? I'm also working very hard. I didn't even take care of Aheng when she was young. I spent a lot of effort taking care of this little guy for a day, but he didn't even call me master. Do you want to be little Jing Kong's master? The old chancellor looked at Marquis Xianping up and down, and his eyes lit up little by little. That's easy. You help me with one thing, and I'll find a way to make Jing Kong call you master. Marquis Xianping looked at the old chancellor suspiciously. It rained at night and dissipated a lot of the summer heat. The rain stopped at dawn, and the palace was filled with fragrance mixed with the moist smell of the soil, making people feel relaxed and happy. Empress Xiao got up early. According to the rules of the palace, she should go to Renshou Palace to pay respects to Empress Dowager Zhuang, but Empress Dowager Zhuang wasn't an ordinary Empress Dowager. She had to go to morning court, which saved her from setting rules in front of her. However, not paying respects to Empress Dowager Zhuang didn't mean not paying respects to imperial concubine Jing. Your Highness, this peacock jade hairpin is beautiful, said the palace maid who was combing Empress Xiao's hair. Empress Xiao looked at her reflection in the bronze mirror and sighed. Time makes people grow old, and beauty fades easily. What's the use of a beautiful hairpin? When people grow old, they won't look good wearing anything. The palace maid hurriedly said. How can your highness grow old? You're a peony among flowers, a national beauty and a cypress in the mountains, flourishing in the frost. You'll only become more and more beautiful. Empress Xiao smiled faintly. You have a sweet mouth. She raised her hand and signaled the palace maid to put on the hairpin for her. The palace maid put on the peacock jade hairpin, and picked a few white jade flowers for her. Your highness is the empress, and you don't need to use your beauty to serve others. Why are you afraid of wasting time? Nurse Liao walked in with a basin of water soaked in flower petals. Empress Xiao smiled. Nurse Liao is right. She was the empress, the first wife of His Majesty. Unlike the other concubines, she and His Majesty had been betrothed and had gone through the wedding ceremony. They had a true relationship as husband and wife. As a man, he could spend some time on other women, but his first wife was still his first wife. Empress Xiao soaked her hand in the petal water. Nurse Liao said, Your Highness, Marquis Xianping is here. Brother is here? Empress Xiao's eyes lit up. Nurse Liao sighed inwardly. Only in front of Marquis Xianping would Empress Xiao reveal her ladylike side. Invite him in. It wasn't a quick announcement but a quick invitation. Empress Xiao respected her brother very much. Of course, Marquis Xianping also treated his sister well. Empress Xiao met with Marquis Xianping in the Qingyu Pavilion. Marquis Xianping cupped his hands and bowed. Greetings, Your Highness. Empress Xiao wanted to say something, but hesitated. She glanced at the palace maids and eunuchs in the pavilion and said in a deep voice, All of you can leave. I have a few private words with Marquis Xianping. Yes. The palace maids left one by one. Empress Xiao then stood up with a smile and walked towards Marquis Xianping. Brother. Marquis Xianping looked at her with disdain. Why are you dressed like a bird today? Empress Xiao, who was splashed with a basin of cold water. Empress Xiao took a deep breath. Big Brother's mouth really hasn't changed in the past few decades. Empress Xiao and Marquis Xianping sat on the chairs. She didn't sit on the main seat on the steps, but sat beside Marquis Xianping. Empress Xiao asked, Brother, how are you these days? Marquis Xianping said, Very good. How about you, Your Highness? Empress Xiao smiled. Of course I'm good. Marquis Xianping looked at her exquisite makeup and cumbersome jewelry, and asked, Do you regret entering the palace? Why would I? She didn't regret it. Wasn't it good to be the empress? What's more, although His Majesty had a harem of 3,000 beauties, he had never really neglected her. It was her own idea to marry His Majesty. She was the one who took noble consort Zhuang's place. Noble consort Zhuang was His Majesty's official consort, but after His Majesty ascended the throne, he only made noble consort Zhuang a second-rank consort, and decreed that Empress Xiao was to be His Majesty. Because of this, she and the Xiao family had suffered a lot from Empress Dowager Zhuang's faction. Her brother had taken care of it all by himself. Thus, she was grateful and revered His Majesty. She smiled and asked, Brother, how come you have time to come see me today? I have something to ask of you, Marquis Xianping said. What is it? Empress Xiao asked. Marquis Xianping said. An old friend asked me to bring something to Grand Concubine Jing. It's very precious, so I must personally hand it to Grand Concubine Jing. Empress Xiao smiled and said, I thought it was a big deal. What's so hard about it? I'm going to Pure Flower's palace to pay respects to Grand Concubine Jing. How about brother come with me? All right. Marquis Xianping nodded. The siblings went to Pure Flower's palace. Ever since Grand Concubine Jing moved here, Pure Flower's palace had become much more lively. All the consorts in the imperial harem who had the right to pay respects to Grand Concubine Jing had come. They truly wanted to curry favor with Grand Concubine Jing, and wanted to meet His Majesty by chance. Empress Xiao didn't need to meet His Majesty, but His Majesty treated Grand Concubine Jing like his mother, so Empress Xiao naturally respected her like a mother-in-law. However, Empress Xiao never expected that noble consort Zhuang would also come. The two most powerful consorts in the imperial harem met at the entrance of Pure Flower's palace with their eunuchs and palace maids. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen. The two were originally evenly matched in the imperial harem, but with Marquis Xianping supporting Empress Xiao today, Empress Xiao's aura was much stronger than usual. Marquis Xianping. Noble consort Zhuang greeted with a smile. Noble consort. Marquis Xianping half-heartedly cupped his hands. He was also like this in front of His Majesty, so noble consort Zhuang didn't mind his attitude. Noble consort Zhuang smiled and looked towards Empress Xiao. Is Empress here to pay respects to Grand Concubine? Could it be that noble consort isn't? Empress Xiao asked indifferently. Noble consort Zhuang smiled. Ningguang suppressed a group of bandits a few days ago. The villagers were grateful for His Majesty's kindness, and specially made some tea cakes for Ningguang to bring to His Majesty. Ningguang is still in the mountains dealing with the aftermath, so His Majesty could only have His Majesty's imperial bodyguard bring them back. This consort will do it for him. Ningguang. Her son was clearly the crown prince, but His Majesty always had His Majesty's study in the upper study. Ningguang was often entrusted with important tasks and helped His Majesty rule the world. Thinking about it now, Ningguang's reputation among the commoners was about to surpass His Majesty's. Empress Zhao's fingers tightened, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. Let's go in, Marquis Xianping said. Empress Xiao rolled her eyes at noble consort Zhuang, and walked into Pure Flower's palace with Marquis Xianping. Noble consort Zhuang bowed slightly, and was very perfunctory. It wasn't until Empress Xiao and Marquis Xianping entered Grand Concubine Jing's bedchamber that noble consort Zhuang's expression turned cold. The female official on the side snorted. What's so great about her? If it wasn't for His Majesty breaking off relations with the Empress Dowager, the position of Empress would have long been yours. Noble consort Zhuang sneered. What's the use of sitting on the Empress Dowager's seat? She gave birth to two idiotic sons. It's hard for her to take on important tasks. Noble consort Zhuang also entered Pure Flower's palace. She had indeed come today to deliver tea cakes to His Majesty. The commoners didn't pay particular attention to the food and it wasn't clean, but His Majesty didn't really eat it. He only needed to know the intentions of Ningguang and the commoners. No matter how many achievements Ningguang made outside, he would definitely tell the commoners that he was following Imperial Father's orders. The one protecting the commoners wasn't him, but his Imperial Father, the Emperor of Zhao Country. How could His Majesty not dote on such a son? His Majesty was truly happy when he saw the tea cakes and didn't eat them. However, he did praise Ningguang greatly. Noble consort has taught her son well. His Majesty's heart was filled with joy. He thought of something and sighed softly. If His Majesty was half as sensible as his older brother, Zhen wouldn't be so worried. Noble consort Zhuang smiled. If His Majesty doesn't mind, his older brother would be very happy to take him out to gain experience. She didn't flatter His Majesty or belittle His Majesty's son. Instead, she spoke of brotherly respect, which made His Majesty very happy. It's time for them to go out and gain experience. Later, Zhen will find a job for the two brothers to do together. His Majesty paused, then said, Zhen hasn't seen Yan Er and Xiner for a while. Have them come to the palace some other day. Qin Yan and Qin Xian were the children of Ning Wang's concubines. One was 3 years old, and the other was 2 years old. Yes, noble consort Zhuang agreed with a smile. Putting down the booklet, the emperor said, "Since you're here, come with Zhen to see consort Jing's mother." It would be impolite for noble consort Zhuang to refuse. Inside Qiuhua Pavilion, Empress Xiao and Marquis Xianping had already paid their respects to consort Jing. Empress Xiao was sitting next to consort Jing. When she saw the emperor enter with noble consort Zhuang, her face turned sour. "Greetings to consort Jing's mother." Noble consort Zhuang bowed. "What are you doing here?" The emperor looked at Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping said, "This subject has been entrusted with something to give to consort dowager." As he spoke, he took out a small brocade box from his wide sleeve. Granny Kai walked over, took the box, and presented it to consort Jing with both hands. Consort Jing was still seriously ill and didn't look well. She covered her face with a handkerchief and coughed twice, then took the box. "Which old friend is it?" Consort Jing asked with a smile. Marquis Xianping said, "That old friend said that consort dowager will know if you open the box." Consort Jing nodded and opened the box. Marquis Xianping was the emperor's trusted aide, so he was trustworthy and wouldn't harm her. However, no one expected that a dart would shoot out the moment the box was opened. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Marquis Xianping's body also shook. He never expected that the box would contain a concealed weapon. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to make a move. Consort Jing was old and weak. She was done for. She was going to lose her life. The dart shot straight for Consort Jing's face. Consort Jing's eyes turned cold as she waved her 2 fingers and caught the dart. Everyone stared at her, dumbfounded. The hall fell silent in an instant. Digression. I won't say anything else. I'm begging for monthly votes. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111544947. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Bikuj mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 335. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online can be found here. Everyone, including the emperor, was stunned by the scene before them. Grand concubine Jing, who had been sickly and on the verge of collapsing from a gust of wind, had caught a dart aimed at her with her bare hands in the next second. This was too exciting. Everyone was so shocked that no one could say anything for a long time. Logically speaking, the box that Marquis Xianping had given to Grand Concubine Jing should have been charged with the crime of attempting to assassinate the Grand Concubine. However, the fact that Grand Concubine Jing had caught the darts with her bare hands was so shocking that no one thought of Marquis Xianping. Even Marquis Xianping hadn't thought of himself. And mother? The emperor stuttered. Grand Concubine Jing immediately returned to her senses. Her body swayed and her fingers loosened, causing the dart to fall to the shiny floor with a loud thud. Only then did everyone come back to their senses, and their eyes widened in unison. Granny Kai's eyes flickered as she slapped the box out of Grand Concubine Jing's hands. Marquis Xianping, how dare you assassinate the Grand Concubine in Pure Flower's palace? Fortunately, the Grand Concubine is a descendant of a general, and learned a bit of martial arts from the old uncle before entering the palace. Otherwise, you would have succeeded by now. The old uncle was Grand Concubine Jing's father. After Grand Concubine Jing was conferred the title of concubine, her maternal family also rose in status. Her father was made Count Yanzhen, and given the rank of Major 4th-rank General of Might. Before this, Count Yanzhen was only a 6th-rank military captain. It was a bit of an exaggeration to call her a descendant of a general. But once a person achieved meteoric success, their past could be polished and embellished, and history could be forgotten. Thus, in everyone's eyes, Grand Concubine Jing deserved Granny Kai's title of descendant of a general. Noble consort Zhuang pursed her lips. She was one of the few people who snorted in disdain. Her aunt was the descendant of a scholar, and Grand Concubine Jing was known as the descendant of a general. Everyone called her the twin beauties of Zhao capital, one for the scholarly and one for the martial arts. How could she be worthy of being called one of the two beauties alongside his aunt? Noble consort Zhuang touched the tip of her nose with her handkerchief and said with a faint smile, "It's been so many years, but Imperial Consort Dowager's skills haven't changed at all. She's so agile." This. Granny Kai opened her mouth. Old Concubine Jing said with a smile, "I neglected my practice in the palace and slacked off. Later on, I moved to the nunnery. When I had nothing to do, I would practice to pass the time." Cough cough. As she spoke, she covered her face and coughed. "But I've been sick these days, so I can't practice anymore," the emperor said in a daze. In the past, I've never heard my mother mention it. They had had a very difficult time in the palace. After Empress Dowager Zhuang was banished to the cold palace, the three of them lost their protection and suffered a lot of bullying. He remembered that once Zijiaoyi, whose position was below his lady mother's, had sent her dog to attack Ning'an, who was beside his lady mother. Imperial concubine mother used her body to shield Ning'an. She was bitten black and blue all over, and Ning'an was also slightly injured. "Since my mother knows martial arts, why did you?" The emperor suddenly realized that he didn't trust old concubine Jing enough. Old concubine Jing smiled bitterly. "Your Majesty wants to ask about the time Ning'an and I were chased and bitten by Mu Jiaoyi's dog? Mu Jiaoyi is noble consort Lu's person. I can hide once, but I can't hide forever. Noble consort Lu wants me to be injured. If I don't show her my injuries, she won't let it go. It's just that Ning'an also suffered some minor injuries." Fortunately, noble consort Lu vented her anger. Otherwise, the three of us would have been in a worse situation. Granny Kai said in a timely manner, "Old concubine mother injured her leg at that time. She didn't want Princess Ning'an and your Majesty to worry, so she kept it a secret. Since then, whenever it rained, her leg would hurt like it was being pricked by needles. It's gotten worse in recent years. She would occasionally fall ill even on sunny days. That's why she often falls down." People who practiced martial arts weren't immune to injuries. For example, Marquis Xianping had a waist injury on the battlefield. The surprise in the emperor's eyes dissipated, and he walked forward guiltily. "I've wronged mother." He held old concubine Jing's hand with one hand, and patted her back with the other to help her breathe. The emperor, who had favored noble consort Zhuang a moment ago, now glared at her coldly. Noble consort Zhuang knew that she had misspoken. She dropped her handkerchief and bowed. I meant to say that it's fortunate that old concubine mother didn't neglect her martial arts practice. Otherwise, she might have met with misfortune today." Martial arts practice? Why hadn't she heard of it before? Granny Kai offered a cup of hot tea. "I'll do it." The emperor took the tea and personally fed it to old concubine Jing. Old concubine Jing's expression relaxed a bit, and the emperor finally turned his attention back to Marquis Xianping. He said coldly, "Marquis Xianping, what's going on?" Marquis Xianping felt wronged. He also wanted to know what was going on. That damned old wine jar, was he playing with him? He said seriously, "Your Majesty, this brocade box was given to me by Chancellor Hua. I didn't open it, so I didn't know there was a hidden weapon inside." He was a hoodlum, but he wasn't a gentleman who would sneak around and pry into other people's privacy. Of course, the main reason was that he didn't expect the old chancellor to trick him like this. "Why?" the emperor said coldly. "Summon Huoxian." "Yes." Eunuch Wei responded. Eunuch Wei immediately sent a junior eunuch to the directorate to summon the old chancellor to Pure Flowers Palace. Empress Xiao and noble consort Zhuang also stayed here to wait for the results of the emperor's trial. The old chancellor calmly and magnanimously entered the autumn flower pavilion in the side hall of Pure Flowers Palace. His gaze swept across everyone, seemingly surprised to see so many people. He cupped his hands and bowed. This subject kowtows in salute to your majesty, the empress, the imperial concubine dowager, and the imperial concubine dowager. The box and dart had already been picked up by the palace servants and placed on the table next to the emperor. The emperor waved his hand impatiently. No need for formalities. We didn't call you here to see you pay your respects. The old chancellor secretly raised his brows. His Majesty's temper was very strong. The emperor casually picked up the box on the table and coldly threw it on the ground in front of the old chancellor. What is this? Do you recognize it? The box fell on the ground and smashed open. The shiny dart inside rolled out and coincidentally rolled next to the old chancellor's feet. The old chancellor squatted down and picked up the box and dart together with a strange expression. What? You don't recognize it? When the emperor said this, he looked deeply at Marquis Xianping. Marquis Xianping said to the old chancellor, "The one surnamed Hua, don't play dumb. You personally handed this box to me last night and asked me to pass it to the imperial concubine dowager for you." It was a great taboo for a subject to privately exchange gifts with the imperial concubine. However, the old chancellor was too pure, so it made people suspect his intentions. The old chancellor said innocently, "That's right, I did hand the box to you. Where is the item in the box?" The emperor said coldly, "This dart is the item in the box." The old chancellor looked at the emperor with a dumbfounded expression. "How is that possible? I clearly put in 20 taels of silver." He looked at Grand Concubine Jing. "Imperial Concubine Dowager, do you still remember when I went to the temple to offer incense many years ago? There were too many pilgrims at that time, so a thief sneaked in and stole my silver. You happened to pass by nearby and borrowed 10 taels of silver for the incense after asking for the reason. I once promised that I would repay you double the amount in the future. It had been a long time since this incident happened. If the old chancellor hadn't brought it up, Grand Concubine Jing would have almost forgotten about it. She tried hard to recall and asked with uncertainty, "Didn't we agree to buy a couplet from you at that time? I didn't borrow the silver from you." The old chancellor said righteously, "Imperial concubine said that she wanted to buy a couplet written by me to solve my urgent need, and was afraid that my self-esteem would be damaged. However, I also said that I would repay the silver in the future." Grand Concubine Jing didn't have much of an impression of the latter part. After all, who would keep a record of 10 taels of silver for several years? The emperor asked suspiciously, "Why did you have to return it now of all times?" The old chancellor let out a dry laugh and said embarrassedly, "To be honest, I forgot about it. It was only when I heard the news that old concubine Jing returned to the palace that I suddenly remembered this old score." Good heavens, good heavens. Grand concubine Jing really did give him the silver. He did say that he would repay her double the amount, but Grand concubine Jing didn't agree at the time. She only said that he might as well write a couplet for her and take it that she bought it from him. However, so many years had passed, and he insisted on returning the silver. Grand concubine Jing probably couldn't remember it clearly anymore. Even if she remembered it clearly, she wasn't afraid that there would be mistakes in her memory. He said that he remembered it that way. Fortunately, Grand concubine Jing and the emperor didn't harp on the details of the silver. Instead, they talked about the item in the brocade box again. The emperor said, "You gave the silver, but Marquis Xianping used it as a dart today and almost injured Grand concubine Jing." "What?" The old chancellor was flabbergasted and panicked. He knelt down with a plop. "Your Majesty is wise. This old subject has indeed placed silver taels. I also don't know why the silver became a concealed weapon. I can swear to the heavens." Marquis Xianping gritted his teeth. Keep acting for me," noble concubine Zhuang said with a smile. "Chancellor Hua is so confident. Could it be that he really didn't put it there? But after him, it seems that Marquis Xianping was the only one who touched the box in private." Noble concubine Zhuang. Empress Xiao stopped her with a stern voice. Noble concubine Zhuang smiled. "I don't mean to slander Marquis Xianping. I'm just analyzing the facts. Marquis Xianping said. I didn't open the box after receiving it yesterday and kept it with me. After returning home, I put it in my room. The only people who can enter my room are me and my bodyguard, Chongjing. Chongjing didn't touch the box. Chongjing wasn't interested in this kind of boxy thing. He wouldn't even bother to look at it. Empress Xiao stood up and stood beside her brother. She saluted the emperor and said, Your Majesty, Marquis Xianping is loyal to you and respectful to concubine Jing's mother. He would never frame concubine Jing's mother. Especially in front of so many people. Isn't it stupid to use something he personally handed over? Noble concubine Zhuang smiled faintly and said, Maybe someone used this idea to make the impossible possible, so that they could escape suspicion. Empress Zhao's eyes turned cold. I'm talking to His Majesty. It's not your turn to interrupt. In the past, Empress Xiao didn't use her status to suppress noble concubine Zhuang. After all, noble concubine Zhuang had the support of the Empress Dowager, and her real power wasn't small. Today she was anxious, so she said this. Noble concubine Zhuang snorted coldly. The emperor looked at Marquis Xianping heavily. Has anyone sneaked into your room? Marquis Xianping calmly met the emperor's sharp gaze. Your Majesty, this official doesn't dare to say that the entire Marquis Xianping is impregnable, but this official's room is guarded by Chongjing, and this official also rests there. With our skills, it's impossible for anyone to do anything under our eyes. The emperor pondered. The Chongjing you're talking about is the assassin you brought back from the Dark Knight sect? Marquis Xianping said, That's right. The Dark Knight sect was a power outside of the 6 countries. It didn't belong to any country, and was headquartered on an island. The assassins of the Dark Knight sect were all first-class experts. What's more, what Marquis Xianping said was right. He himself was also a first-class expert. The old chancellor muttered. What if someone took action while you were asleep? Marquis Xianping looked at him and chuckled. Do you know that in Zhao country, there are no more than 5 people who can defeat Chongjing? One is the Grand Marshal of the world, Tang Yueshan. One is Marquis Ding and's Marquis Gu. The other 3 are the Dragon Shadow Guards that the previous emperor left to the emperor. The reason I said 3 is because I've only seen 3 of them. I don't know if there are more. The old chancellor said seriously, so there are still people who can commit crimes. Marquis Xianping said indifferently, Tang Yueshan went with Prince Ning to suppress bandits early this month and hasn't returned yet. He's not in the capital, so how could he commit a crime in my manor? The old chancellor said. Then what about Marquis Gu? Marquis Xianping narrowed his eyes. The one surnamed Hua. Are you really stupid or are you pretending to be stupid? The old marquis was the emperor's confidant. This was something no one in the world knew. Hua Xian, this old thing, was deeply trusted by the emperor, so how could he not know? Would he harm concubine Jing? Did he know about the existence of this box? Empress Xiao knew that the old marquis was secretly training soldiers for the emperor. She also believed that the old marquis had nothing to do with this matter. Noble consort Zhuang was one of the Empress Dowager's people, but the Empress Dowager was well informed. How could she not know that the old marquis and the emperor were only at odds on the surface? She sneered. If that's the case, it's neither this nor that. Could it be the late emperor's dragon shadow guard? Marquis Xianping, why don't you say that His Majesty wants to harm his mother? Noble consort Zhuang didn't know that the emperor had already given the dragon shadow guard to concubine Jing. So even if it was the dragon shadow guard, it wasn't the emperor who wanted to harm concubine Jing, but concubine Jing herself. But why would concubine Jing harm herself? Could it be a ruse? Why? Was it to frame Marquis Xianping or the old chancellor? The emperor felt that his mother had no reason to do this, even if she was innocent and kind-hearted. Marquis Xianping and the old chancellor were both his confidants. Why would his mother cut off his arms? The emperor looked coldly at Marquis Xianping. I'll leave this matter to you. You must get to the bottom of this. If you can't, I'll take it that you did it. Marquis Xianping. After leaving the imperial palace, Marquis Xianping almost couldn't resist pressing the old chancellor to the ground to wipe the floor. The one with the surname Hua, you've improved. You've even tricked me. What are you saying, Marquis Xianping? I really don't know why the silver turned into darts. The old chancellor refused to admit it. The #1 green tea in Zhao country, his acting skills were perfect. Marquis Xianping gritted his teeth and said, "Seeing that you were once Ahing's teacher, I won't kill you first. But if I find evidence, even if His Majesty doesn't kill you, I will personally end you." The old chancellor cupped his hands. "Farewell, Marquis." Marquis Xianping left in a huff. Only when he was far away did the old chancellor let out a long sigh of relief. He came to his carriage and stepped on the footstool to get on. Inside the carriage, Gu Changqing and Gu Jiao had been waiting for a long time. "Chancellor Hua, how is it?" Gu Changqing asked. The old chancellor smiled. "It's going well. And it's a little unexpected. I found out that old concubine Jing knows martial arts." He didn't see old concubine Jing catch the darts with her bare hands. He only asked eunuch Wei when he came out. He originally thought that it would be the late emperor's men of sacrifice. It could be seen that people couldn't care less about hiding themselves at the crucial moment of life and death. Gu Jiao made a sound and said, "Her pulse is so weak. She really doesn't seem like someone who knows martial arts." Gu Changqing thought for a while and said, "Maybe she took some medicine to change her pulse." It's possible," Gu Jiao nodded. Her eyes suddenly became bright. "Then can we?" "No." The old chancellor heartlessly took away her sack. "Does His Majesty have any suspicions about her?" Gu Changqing asked. The old chancellor drank a mouthful of tea and said with a smirk, "It won't be so fast." But the seed of suspicion has been planted. As long as it happens a few more times, the seed will germinate in His Majesty's heart. It will grow strong and blossom into a flower that will sow discord. Gu Changqing. You really look like a treacherous official. Digression. Even the exemption is so early. Pampering fans, right? Exploding with new chapters tomorrow. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels will be updated even faster. Millions of novels to read for free. Novels with connotations that can't be found on the internet are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_896428226/111517289. HTML Genius remembers this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website, zhbqg.com. Chapter 336. The latest chapter isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that can't be found online are all available here. The group took the carriage back to Jadewater Alley. "There's something I don't understand," Gu Changqing suddenly said before getting off the carriage. "What is it?" the old chancellor asked. Gu Changqing pondered. Since the late emperor's shadow dragon guards are loyal to His Majesty, then they should know that His Majesty values Jiao Jiao very much. Why would they help the evildoers harm Jiao Jiao? The old chancellor replied, "This is where the shadow dragon guards are different from the usual men of sacrifice. They are tools for killing and have no thoughts of their own. They only listen to orders. His Majesty made them loyal to old concubine Jing, so old concubine Jing's words are their imperial edict. Unless His Majesty personally takes them back." "I see." Gu Changqing suddenly realized. He had been in the military camp for so long, and thought he was familiar with the experts of Zhao country. But he didn't expect that he only knew the tip of the iceberg. There was such a terrifying power hidden under the surface. "I'm still too young," he muttered. The old chancellor patted his shoulder. "It's not too late to know now. Your grandfather is His Majesty's confidant, so he must know about the existence of the shadow dragon guards. It's just that the time wasn't right, so he didn't tell you. The shadow dragon guards were very powerful in the early years, but unfortunately, they were either dead or injured. In this generation, only old concubine Jing and a few others are left. His Majesty himself has never seen the terror of the Shadow Dragon Guards, so he doesn't know what kind of killing weapon he gave old concubine Jing. Gu Chongqing nodded. No wonder Eunuch Wei said that His Majesty recently sent a few more shadow guards to old concubine Jing's side. The old chancellor said, with the Shadow Dragon Guards, why would he need shadow guards? His Majesty is the one who is too young. Wait! Gu Chongqing suddenly remembered something. His Majesty once encountered an assassination attempt. Could it be that the Shadow Dragon Guards were among those people? The Shadow Dragon Guards even killed His Majesty? That's not the case. Old Chancellor shook his head. Dragon Shadow Guards won't assassinate His Majesty. This is the first order that the late Emperor left for them. The second order is to obey His Majesty's orders. Even if His Majesty ordered them to kill him, the Dragon Shadow Guards would still obey the first order. Last time, the person who tried to assassinate His Majesty was a hostage from the state of Chun. However, it is impossible for a hostage from the state of Chun to know His Majesty's whereabouts so well. He has a spy in the palace. Gu Chongqing asked, could the spy be one of concubine Jing's men? The old chancellor stroked his beard and fell into deep thought. Currently, there is no evidence to prove that it's her. If it was her, why would she assassinate His Majesty? What good would it do her to kill His Majesty? Gu Chongqing thought for a moment. What if her purpose is not to kill His Majesty, but to stab His Majesty and frame Empress Dowager Zhuang? In fact, His Majesty did blame the assassination on Empress Dowager Zhuang. The old chancellor had a solemn expression. We can't rule out this possibility. If that was the case, then concubine Jing was too scary. She could think of it as revenge against Empress Dowager Zhuang, or fighting for the position of Empress Dowager. However, His Majesty respected her so much that she could do it. I hope we are wrong, Gu Chongqing said. His Majesty respected concubine Jing so much that he was almost no different from her flesh and blood, except for the fact that he wasn't born from her womb. Gu Chongqing understood His Majesty's feelings for concubine Jing. Gu Qinglin and Gu Qingfeng used to feel the same way about concubine Ling. The difference was that concubine Ling was just a concubine. Gu Qinglin and Gu Qingfeng knew they had a mother since they were young. In their hearts, their mother was more important. When His Majesty was born, he was brought to concubine Jing's palace and adopted under her name. The relationship between mother and son was strong for many years. It wasn't until His Majesty grew up that he learned that his birth mother was a palace maid. At that time, he couldn't have any feelings for his birth mother. The former emperor wouldn't allow him to have any feelings for a lowly palace maid. If His Majesty was hurt by concubine Jing, it would be a devastating blow. As the two talked, the carriage arrived at the door. The carriage stopped, and the surroundings quieted down. Only then did the two hear a small snoring sound beside them. It turned out that Gu Jiao had fallen asleep while hugging a pillow. The little girl was sleeping soundly. Her cheeks were pressed against the pillow until they were chubby and bright red from the heat. The two couldn't help but laugh. This girl really didn't have the slightest interest in these things. She just went to sleep when she wasn't allowed to put a sack over her. I'll go down first, Old Chancellor said soundlessly. Gu Chongqing nodded his head and bowed towards Old Chancellor, giving him a junior's greeting. The two didn't wake Gu Jiao up. Gu Chongqing stayed in the carriage and took out a fan from under the table, gently fanning Gu Jiao. Perhaps it was because it was cooler, but Gu Jiao's furrowed brows relaxed. Yao Shi, who was picking vegetables in the front yard, saw this scene and rubbed her slightly protruding belly. A trace of gentleness flashed through her eyes. Gu Jiao slept all the way until little Jing Kong came back from the Imperial College. As soon as the little trumpet spirit got home, she started blaring tirelessly. It was hard for Gu Jiao not to wake up. Fortunately, she had enough sleep. Gu Chongqing still had matters to attend to at the military camp, so he couldn't stay for dinner. In the evening, smoke rose in spirals from the kitchen chimneys in the alley. Xiao Lulang had also returned from his duty at Hanlin Academy. He went to Old Chancellor's place to discuss some matters. When he returned home, he found Gu Jiao sitting listlessly in the east room. She had slept for an entire afternoon, so logically speaking, She should be full of energy. But her sighing and moaning really showed the essence of little Jing Kong's imitation of Master Zhao next door. Xiao Luleng couldn't help but smile. After dinner, Gu Jiao returned to the house listlessly and continued to be listless. Xiao Luleng knocked on the door. "It's me." Gu Jiao sat up. "Come in." Xiao Luleng pushed the door and entered. Gu Jiao thought he was here to give her mung bean soup again. Although she wasn't hungry, she still sat down at the table very cooperatively. Who knew that Xiao Luleng didn't give her a bowl of mung bean soup? Instead, he just stared at her. Gu Jiao gradually sensed that something was wrong. She raised her head and met Xiao Liulong's gaze. She asked strangely, "What?" Xiao Liulong's bottomless eyes were shining. There was a helpless smile that even he didn't notice. "Don't you want to put a gunny sack on me?" Gu Jiao's little ears perked up. Then she blinked and looked at the window. She said in a serious tone, "I'm not that kind of person." Xiao Luleng almost believed her. Supporting someone until they couldn't get out of bed. You really aren't that kind of person. Xiao Luleng held back his smile and asked seriously, "Then do you want to go to the palace to see Grandaunt?" Gu Jiao sat up straight. "This of course I want to go." "Change into this." Xiao Luleng magically brought out a set of young eunuch clothes. After he left, Gu Jiao changed into the clothes and put on the hat. The door was pulled open and a playful young eunuch walked out. Xiao Luleng was caught off guard and stared straight at her. He never expected that the woman would look so cute in the eunuch's clothes. She had a pair of big, blinking eyes that were bright and clear. Her small face was the size of a palm, and her facial features were unbelievably exquisite. Even the red birthmark that was often criticized by others seemed to have a different kind of spirit. If all the young eunuchs in the palace looked like this, then what was the point of taking concubines and choosing consorts? "Do I look good?" Gu Jiao asked. "Not bad." A certain person said with a cold face, "Get on." The two got on the carriage. Today Nanxiang personally went to Qinghe Academy to pick up Gu Xiaoshan and Gu Yan. Lu Quan was free, but now he wasn't free. He had to send the two to the palace. Gu Jiao sat obediently in the carriage. She stretched out her legs and tiptoed. It was obvious that she was in a good mood. The carriage arrived at the palace gate. Xiao Luleng generously showed his Renshou Palace token. "Can I trouble you to see if there's anyone else in the carriage?" the guard asked politely. Xiao Luleng lifted the curtain and generously allowed the guard to size him up. In reality, he blocked most of Gu Jiao's view, so he could only see the young eunuch's clothes. Xiao Liulong's expression didn't change as he said, "It's the young eunuch of Renshou Palace." "Ah, so it's like that. Xiao Xiuzhu, please." The guard moved to the side to let them pass. The carriage passed by the throne room and couldn't go any further as it approached the inner palace. Xiao Luleng said, "All right, let's stop here. Uncle Lu, you go back first. We'll go back by ourselves later." Lu Quan said, "I'll wait for you." Xiao Luleng said, "No need. Great Aunt will send someone to send us back." "That's true." Lu Quan smiled. "Then I'll be leaving first." After Lu Quan left, Xiao Luleng and Gu Jiao went to the vicinity of Pure Flower's palace. The days were long and the nights were short in summer. It was getting late, but dusk was still boundless. Grand concubine Jing had the habit of taking a stroll after dinner to aid digestion. So she went to the imperial garden with Nurse Kai and the others after dinner. What had happened in Pure Flower's palace in the morning had affected her somewhat, so her complexion wasn't very good. Nurse Kai supported her while the junior palace mates followed behind them, not daring to say a word. "Let's go sit in the pavilion," Grand concubine Jing said to Nurse Kai. "Yes." Nurse Kai helped her up the steps and sat down on a stone bench in the pavilion. She then ordered one of the junior palace maids, "Go make a pot of flower tea and bring it over." "Yes." The junior palace maid went to a nearby tea house to make the tea. The evening breeze blew gently, and the weeping willows swayed gently. The imperial garden was bathed in tranquility and peace. The junior palace maid brought over the tea and poured a cup for Grand concubine Jing with both hands. Nurse Kai reached out to take it, but she sucked in a cold breath when she touched it. She snapped, "How dare you? Do you want to burn esteemed imperial concubine to death?" "Ah. This servant wouldn't dare." The junior palace maid was so frightened that she fell to her knees. Because her movements were too big, the tea in the cup spilled out and splashed all over her hands, turning them red in an instant. Grand concubine Jing said softly, "Forget it, she didn't do it on purpose. She's still young, so just teach her more. Get up." "Many thanks, esteemed imperial concubine. Many thanks, esteemed imperial concubine." The junior palace maid was moved to tears as she stood up shakily. "Put it down," Grand concubine Jing said as she looked at the tea in her hands. "Yes." The junior palace maid placed the tea on the stone table. Grand concubine Jing then said, "Let me see your hands." The junior palace maid quickly hid her hands behind her back. "I wouldn't dare disgrace esteemed imperial concubine's eyes. Just let me see," Grand concubine Jing said kindly. "Yes." The junior palace maid lowered her head and stretched out her hands nervously. Grand concubine Jing looked at the back of her hands and said, "It's all red, so there's no need to serve me anymore. Go back and apply some ointment." She paused for a bit before adding, "I almost forgot that this isn't a nunnery, and you girls don't have ointment with you. Granny Kai, take her to my room and give her a bottle of ointment for burns." Granny Kai smiled. "You're so kind, esteemed imperial concubine." "Many thanks, esteemed imperial concubine." The junior palace maid knelt down and kowtowed respectfully. The palace maids and eunuchs who saw this all felt that Grand concubine Jing was indeed a kind-hearted person. She had been a vegetarian for many years and had the heart of a bodhisattva. She was much easier to get along with than the one at Rensho Palace. Working at Rensho Palace, one had to be very careful all the time. If they angered that person at some point in time, they would be beaten to death without any explanation. Granny Kai then led the junior palace maid away. Not far away, Xiao Luleng retracted his gaze and said to Gu Jiao, "My stomach isn't feeling well, so I suddenly feel like going to the washroom. Wait for me here." "Forget it, let's not wait. You go to Rensho Palace first, I'll go there myself later." Gu Jiao looked at Grand concubine Jing, then looked at Xiao Luleng and nodded her head like she was pounding garlic. Xiao Liulong's lips curled slightly, then he pursed his lips. "Then I'll be going." Gu Jiao, hurry. Xiao Luleng, who was being disdained by his wife. Xiao Luleng walked towards the washroom. He naturally wasn't going to go to the toilet. He walked as far away as possible and took out a bamboo flute from his wide sleeve behind a rock garden, where no one was passing by. He had just gone to see the old chancellor and learned about Gu Jiao's assassination attempt and what had happened at Pure Flower's palace. He also learned that Grand concubine Jing had the deceased emperor's loyalists in her hands. There was one thing that even the old chancellor and his majesty didn't know, and that was that Princess Xinyang also had loyalists left behind by the deceased emperor. Xiao Luleng composed himself and blew into the bamboo flute in his hand. On a lush tree, a black figure holding a longsword was leaning against the tree trunk with his eyes closed. Suddenly his ears twitched, and he opened his eyes. He gripped the longsword in his hand and used his qinggong to fly in the direction of the flute's sound. Granny Kai left with the young palace maid whose hand had been scalded, leaving only Grand concubine Jing and a few other palace maids in the pavilion. "Let us go pick some flowers for your highness," said one of the palace maids. "All right." Grand concubine Jing nodded. "Go and pick them quickly. It's getting dark." "Yes, your highness." 4 palace maids and eunuchs walked down the steps and started picking flowers from the bushes. Several hidden guards were lying in ambush in the surroundings. Whoosh! A hidden guard disappeared. Whoosh! Another hidden guard disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. All the hidden guards had disappeared. Grand concubine Jing seemed to have sensed something. She frowned and turned around, but before she could see clearly, someone had put a gunny sack over her head. She knew martial arts, after all, and couldn't be compared to the crown prince's concubine. With a twist of her finger, she shot a poison needle at Gu Jiao. Yo-ho! Poison scorpion. Fortunately, Gu Jiao was prepared. She leaned to the side and stabbed the needle into Grand concubine Jing's thigh. Grand concubine Jing didn't even have time to scream before she was drugged. Digression. The latest chapters have begun. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_8964286/111491879. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. Chapter 337. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated even faster. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with content that cannot be found online are all available here. The expert had been attracted by the sound of the flute, and had used his qinggong to arrive behind the fake mountain where Xiao Lulang was standing. He wore a mask, revealing only a pair of eyes that were colder and more bloodthirsty than an ordinary assassin's. He landed steadily in front of Xiao Lulang and sized up Xiao Lulang. When Xiao Lulang was young, he had seen the princess of Xinyang use the flute to summon the previous emperor's loyalists. He had played the same song. There was no one in this area, and his song was not loud. Only the loyalists of the previous emperor could hear it. At first he was a little worried that he had played the wrong song, but it seemed that he was right. However, why was he alone? Were the others not in the imperial palace? In his impression, the loyalists of the previous emperor wore masks like this and had the same terrifying murderous aura. They would not indiscriminately kill people outside of their mission, especially people who did not know martial arts, unless they were obstructed in the middle of their mission. Xiao Lulang understood that as long as he did not make any provocative moves, he would not make a move against him. His eyes were filled with confusion and curiosity. Xiao Lulang generously allowed him to size him up. After a moment, as if to verify something, Xiao Lulang said to him, "Could I trouble you to help me pick a leaf from the top of my head?" But that person left without even looking back. Xiao Lulang sighed. He had originally thought that if he could play the song to summon the other person, he might be able to make the other person listen to his orders. It seemed that he had thought too much. The princess of Xinyang had been able to control the loyalists of the previous emperor not because of this song, but because she was the new master that the previous emperor had passed down to them. When this loyalist heard the song, he probably thought that his original master was summoning him. But when he rushed over and found that he was not the previous emperor, nor was he the emperor, he turned and left. Well, he could only stall for so much time. Gu Jiao dragged the person into the small dark room near the supreme liquid pool. Just as she threw the person in, before she could use her snowflake-like violent little fists, a terrifying and familiar aura approached. "Ah, you're back so soon." She hadn't even started yet. Nyahilu Gu Jiao scratched her head frantically, lifted the sack, and kicked it into the supreme liquid pool. Then she ran away, chirping. The court ladies in the imperial garden finally realized that concubine Jing was missing. They looked around and even alerted the emperor in the end. By the time the emperor rushed over from the imperial study, Grand Concubine Jing had already been fished out of the water by the loyalist and brought back to Pure Flower's palace. "Mother!" The emperor rushed to Pure Flower's palace in a hurry and went straight to Grand Concubine Jing's bedchambers, but Kai Mama stopped him outside. "Your Majesty, please wait a moment. Imperial Concubine Dowager is changing clothes." The emperor asked anxiously. "What happened? Why did Mother suddenly disappear?" Kai Mama said in a sad and panicked voice, This servant isn't too sure. Let's wait until we ask Imperial Concubine Dowager." The emperor coldly said, "Why aren't you sure? Aren't you always serving Mother Consort?" Mama Kai said in an aggrieved manner, "This servant was originally serving the Imperial Concubine Dowager, but a palace maid accidentally scalded her hand. The Imperial Concubine was kind and allowed this servant to bring the palace maid back to Pure Flower's palace to apply medicine. How could this servant have expected that Imperial Concubine Dowager would fall into the water while this servant was gone. Fall into the water? The emperor frowned. Grand concubine Jing's pained cries could be heard from inside. Kai Mama quickly said, Imperial concubine dowager is completely drenched. This servant will go in to serve Imperial concubine dowager first. This servant will take her leave. Kai Mama turned and entered Grand concubine Jing's bedchambers. Not long later, the imperial physician also arrived. He was about to bow to the emperor when the emperor waved his hand impatiently. Why aren't you going in yet? The imperial physician shuddered in fright and hurriedly went in with his medical kit. The emperor anxiously waited outside the bedchambers for a full hour before Grand concubine Jing finished packing. Your Majesty. Kai Mama walked out with red eyes and invited the emperor in. The emperor quickly walked to the bed and sat down. His heart ached when he saw Grand concubine Jing sitting at the head of the bed. Her face was pale, her nose was bruised, and her head was wrapped in a large bandage. He coldly looked at Kai Mama. Didn't you say that she only fell into the water? How did she get injured? And such serious injuries at that. How could this be all of his injuries? This was just the tip of the iceberg. Although Gu Jiao hadn't been able to make a move in time, Grand concubine Jing's head had hit the stairs 7 or 8 times in her, but had been rubbed against the limestone floor over 100 times. Her gunny sack had been worn through and her pants had holes in them. It was a bloody mess. Her knees had been hit 3 times, her arms had been hit 5 times, and her waist had been hit dozens of times. For her to suffer like this at her age, she would have died long ago if it weren't for her martial arts. But even with martial arts, her injuries were still very serious. She couldn't move at all, and her entire body would hurt if she did. Kai Mama dropped to her knees and choked out. I also thought that she only fell into the water. Grand concubine Jing weakly said. Your Majesty, this has nothing to do with Kai Mama. Please don't take your anger out on her. She wasn't pretending to be weak now. She was so weak that she could collapse at any moment. You may all leave, Grand concubine Jing said to Kai Mama and the servants in the bedchambers. Kai Mama and the others looked at the emperor nervously, fearing that he would punish them. The emperor waved his hand coldly, and everyone retreated as if relieved of a heavy burden. What's wrong with the servants this time? The emperor gritted his teeth and murmured. Grand concubine Jing raised her arm that was about to break from the pain, and gently placed it on the back of the emperor's hand. She shook her head. It's not their fault. The opponent was too strong. The emperor asked, Where are the men of sacrifice and shadow guards I left for you? Grand concubine Jing replied. The men of sacrifice were lured away, and the shadow guards were knocked out. Those were the palace's experts. The emperor gasped. Who could be so powerful? Grand concubine Jing shook her head. I'm not sure. I felt that something was off at the time, but I was injured before I could see the other party's face. She was embarrassed to say that she had been put in a gunny sack. She couldn't afford to lose face like this. That person took me near the supreme liquid pond. If the men of sacrifice hadn't come back in time and scared that person away, I might have died. That person even knew to throw me into the water, forcing the men of sacrifice to save me. That way, he could have escaped without a trace. So vicious, so vicious. The emperor clenched his fists and trembled with anger. Grand concubine Jing lowered her head and withdrew her hand with a bitter smile. Have I caused trouble for your Majesty? If I hadn't suddenly returned to the palace, none of this would have happened for no reason. The emperor held her hand tightly. Don't say that, mother. It was our intention for you to return to the palace. Someone couldn't bear to see you return and plotted twice in one day, almost taking mother's life. Don't worry, mother. We will definitely ferret out the mastermind. Even if we have to risk our lives, we will bring them to justice. We will seek justice for mother. He was just short of mentioning Empress Dowager Zhuang by name. Grand concubine Jing covered her mouth with her handkerchief and coughed sadly. Mother. The emperor looked coldly at the imperial physician kneeling on the ground. How is mother's body? The imperial physician replied in fear and trepidation. In reply to your Majesty, esteemed imperial concubine was severely injured and frightened by falling into the water. I'm afraid she will need to rest for a while before she can recover. the emperor shouted. Then what are you still doing here? Why aren't you brewing the medicine for Imperial Mother? Yes, yes. The imperial physician left in a cold sweat. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Eunuch Wei walked in with small steps. What is it? The emperor asked. Eunuch Wei said. This servant found the unconscious Xiao Xiuzhua near the supreme liquid pond. The emperor went to the small garden in Pure Flowers Palace. Eunuch Wei called for the imperial physician, who performed acupuncture on Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang slowly woke up and opened his heavy eyelids. He asked, Where is this? Eunuch Wei hurriedly said. This is Pure Flowers Palace. Xiao Xiuzhua, you fainted in the supreme liquid pond just now. Why did you faint? Xiao Lulang was at a loss. I think. I saw a suspicious person just now. She looked like Jiao Jiao. I called out to her, and she knocked me out. What? The little divine doctor knocked you out? Eunuch Wei looked at the emperor in astonishment. He could also see the shock in the emperor's eyes. The emperor was someone who had experienced scheming before. He carefully asked about the time and place of Xiao Liulang's accident, and quickly connected that person to Grand Concubine Jing's assassin. Xiao Lulang was stunned. Your Majesty, you're saying that Grand Concubine Jing's assassin was Jiao Jiao? How is that possible? His acting skills had improved again. He had only done such a shameless thing once or twice, so how did he become so proficient in it? Did he really have some talent in this area? Eunuch Wei was puzzled. But this servant interrogated the palace servants just now. Aside from her, no one else appeared in the vicinity. Xiao Lulang said seriously. Jiao Jiao didn't enter the palace today. Although she has some skills, she doesn't know Qinggong. She wouldn't have been able to enter without using the main entrance. This was the truth. Gu Jiaojiao truly didn't know any Qinggong. The emperor had experienced it firsthand. On the night of the assassination attempt, Gu Jiaojiao had used all 4 legs to escape with him. The emperor's legs had almost broken from running. If she knew Qinggong, she wouldn't have not used it in a life and death situation. This time, Eunuch Wei didn't wait for the emperor's orders. In order to prove the young divine doctor's innocence, he went to the palace gates himself, and asked the guard if Gu Jiao had entered the palace. No. The guard replied with absolute certainty. Eunuch Wei asked, Xiao Xiuzhua entered the palace by himself? The guard replied. There was also a young eunuch from Renshou Palace. This young eunuch didn't arouse Eunuch Wei's suspicions because Empress Dowager Zhuang did often send people to Jadewater Alley to deliver things, or bring people from Jadewater Alley into the palace. Eunuch Wei returned to Pure Flowers Palace to report. The young divine doctor truly didn't enter the palace today. Xiao Lulang said thoughtfully. Could it be someone is impersonating Jiao Jiao? The emperor gritted his teeth. Did you see her appearance clearly? Xiao Lulang shook his head. I didn't see her clearly. Her back was very similar, her clothes, her hair accessories were all the same, and there was also that small basket on her back. In the imperial palace, there wasn't a single palace maid who would wear green clothes and carry a small basket on her back. This was clearly Gu Jiao's attire. The emperor's gaze turned cold. It seems that someone really is impersonating the young divine doctor. Xiao Lulang suddenly realized. Why didn't she kill this subject to silence him? She probably wanted to use this subject to reveal her identity. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Jiao Jiao didn't know Qinggong and instead exposed herself. This balance was very delicate. Even Eunuch Wei didn't know that Gu Jiao didn't know Qinggong. He thought that since the young divine doctor was so skilled, he would definitely be able to leap onto roofs and vault over walls like the palace's experts. It was because he didn't know that the emperor believed that the culprit didn't know either. It seemed that the culprit had miscalculated something. Since the culprit wanted to frame Gu Jiao, then the mastermind couldn't be Empress Dowager Zhuang. No matter how prejudiced the emperor was against Empress Dowager Zhuang, he couldn't believe that she would frame Gu Jiao. When he was recuperating in Jadewater Alley, he had personally seen how well she treated Gu Jiao. He knew that she cherished Gu Jiao as much as she cherished him. Empress Dowager Zhuang's suspicions were naturally dispelled. But if it wasn't her, then who would be so intolerant of Consort Jing's mother? the emperor coldly muttered to himself. His voice wasn't loud, but Eunuch Wei still heard it. Eunuch Wei cautiously glanced at Xiao Lulang. He thought that this kind of thing shouldn't be said in front of Xiao Xiuzhua, right? He could only pray that Xiao Xiuzhua didn't hear it. Xiao Lulang's expression didn't change at all, as if he really hadn't heard anything. He thought seriously for a moment, then said, "Your Majesty, since that person is framing Jiao Jiao, they must be trying to stir up conflict between Pure Flowers Palace and Renshou Palace." It wasn't a secret that Gu Jiao was close to Renshou Palace. If they couldn't prove that the culprit wasn't Gu Jiao, then the fire would definitely burn Empress Dowager Zhuang's head. Xiao Lulang sternly said, "Your Majesty, forgive this subject for speaking bluntly, but someone wants Your Majesty, the Grand Imperial Concubine, and the Empress Dowager to fight among themselves. When the sandpiper and the clam fight, the fisherman benefits. This subject understands that there is an unresolvable conflict between Your Majesty and the Empress Dowager, but Your Majesty must not fall for someone else's scheme in the face of a great enemy." In the past, the emperor wouldn't have listened to these words. However, the evidence today was conclusive, so it was hard for him not to believe it. After Xiao Lulang left the palace, the emperor sat quietly in his study for a long time. It wasn't until the imperial physician came to report to him about Grand Concubine Jing's condition that he got up and went to her bedchambers. "Have you found the culprit?" Grand Concubine Jing asked weakly. The emperor hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he didn't mention that the culprit had pretended to be Gu Jiao and met Xiao Lulang by chance. "There aren't many leads for now. Imperial Mother, please don't worry. We will continue to investigate." Grand Concubine Jing smiled. Amen. Digression. Today was the day that Lulang doted on Jiao Jiao. The latest chapter of this book isn't finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with a deeper meaning that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_8964226/111491792. HTML Genius memorized this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Biku Pavilion's mobile reading website. zhhbqg.com. Chapter 338. Please scan the QR code below to download the app for more exciting content. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online can be found here. Grand Concubine Jing's matter caused such a huge commotion that everyone in the palace knew that she had been ambushed twice in a day. Who do you think did it? In a corner of the palace, a group of palace maids and eunuchs gathered together to secretly discuss Grand Concubine Jing's matter. Who else could it be? Think about it. Who in the palace doesn't want Grand Concubine Jing to come back the most? Could it be the Grand Concubine of Renshou Palace? Shoo. Lower your voice. Do you want to be beheaded? Don't even mention the name of that person. Keep it in your heart and don't say it even in your dreams. Otherwise, just wait for your head to be chopped off. Hundreds of palace maids and eunuchs have died at that person's hands, if not 1,000. So cruel. The new palace maid trembled in fear. In fact, it wasn't just the palace maids and eunuchs who thought so. Even Empress Dowager Zhuang's niece, noble consort Zhuang, believed that her aunt was responsible for Grand Concubine Jing's successive deaths. Your Majesty, this concubine heard that Grand Concubine Jing was ambushed again. Does Your Majesty already have a suspect in mind? Empress Xiao looked at the emperor in the study of Pure Flowers Palace. Her implication was obvious. It was Empress Dowager Zhuang. Unexpectedly, the emperor denied it. Don't make wild guesses. It wasn't the Empress Dowager. Empress Xiao looked as if she had been struck by lightning as she stared blankly at the emperor. What did His Majesty say? It wasn't the Empress Dowager? Since when did His Majesty speak up for the Empress Dowager? He wanted nothing more than to blame it on Empress Dowager Zhuang. Your Majesty, Empress Xiao began. The emperor cut her off. All right, don't ask about concubine Jing's matters. We have our own plans. Go back and restrain the palace maids and tell them not to gossip. Empress Xiao replied in disbelief. Yes. Noble consort Zhuang went to Renshou Palace with a smile and walked into Empress Dowager Zhuang's study. She smiled as she walked. Aunt, you're too amazing. How did you do it? He also taught that vixen, Grand Concubine Jing, a lesson without leaving any evidence behind. I heard that His Majesty did not suspect you at all. There were a few eunuchs in the Palace of Earthly Tranquility who gossiped. Guess what happened? They were all dealt with by the Empress. Auntie, you are really... Noble consort Zhuang was halfway through her words when she saw Empress Dowager Zhuang's cold, knife-like gaze. She quivered. Aunt, do you have nothing better to do? Empress Dowager Zhuang said with dignity. Noble consort Zhuang was suffocated by her aunt's powerful aura. She didn't dare to look directly into Empress Dowager Zhuang's eyes. She hurriedly lowered her head and saluted. Greetings to Aunt. Empress Dowager Zhuang said angrily. I'm very busy. Don't bother me if there's nothing important. Yes. Noble consort Zhuang retreated resentfully. As soon as she left, Eunuch Qin walked in with a cup of tea. Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at the booklet in her hand and asked indifferently, Have you sent him here? Yes, the carriage has arrived at the entrance of Jadewater Alley. Eunuch Qin said with a smile. Empress Dowager Zhuang responded faintly and continued to look at the booklet. Eunuch Qin walked over and put the tea on the table, unable to hide his smile. What are you laughing at? Empress Dowager Zhuang looked at him strangely. Eunuch Qin said, This servant is happy for Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. What is there to be happy about? Two little things who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Their skin is boundless. Gu Jiao wore the little eunuch's clothes and escaped into Renshou Palace. How could Empress Dowager Zhuang not know what was going on? Keep a close eye on the servants' mouths. Empress Dowager Zhuang ordered. Eunuch Qin said, Don't worry, Empress Dowager. This servant has arranged everything properly. Today, Xiao Chuanzi went shopping. Halfway through, the carriage broke down. He met Xiao Xiuzhua by chance and returned to the palace with Xiao Xiuzhua. The little eunuch that the imperial bodyguard saw in Xiao Xiuzhua's carriage was Xiao Chuanzi. Xiao Chuanzi did go out to buy today. However, after this incident, Eunuch Qin didn't wait for him to come back before sending an imperial bodyguard to intercept him. When Gu Jiao left the palace, she still used the identity of Xiao Chuanzi. Inside, there was a problem with the cloth that she bought. Xiao Chuanzi went to change the cloth. At night, the real Xiao Chuanzi would return to the palace with the changed cloth. Eunuch Qin continued. There are also eyewitnesses. Imperial bodyguard Lu of the Imperial Guards and Nurse Zhou of the Cold Palace will see a woman in green with a small basket on her back. They speculate that the other party came from the Cold Palace. Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao didn't ask Empress Dowager Zhuang to do these things. After they were done, they left happily. Empress Dowager Zhuang's face was stiff. She snorted. Aren't they afraid of being exposed? Do they really think that they did it flawlessly? Eunuch Qin couldn't stop laughing. Obviously, she liked them very much. She appreciated that the two children were newborn calves who were not afraid of tigers. However, she had to pretend to dislike them. Eunuch Qin laughed. Isn't this because they know that Empress Dowager will clean up for them? Empress Dowager trusts them. They also give their backs to Empress Dowager. She didn't know how many times she had snorted. Trust between people was never expressed through words. It was a tacit understanding through actions. It was a trust in a person's sincerity and ability. It was quite satisfying. Empress Dowager Zhuang snorted. Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang returned to Baishui Alley. Tonight, the owner of the orchard had invited a theatrical troupe to set up a stage in the orchard. The neighbors all went to watch the play. Yao Shi and the family's children also went. The home was empty. Although they had eaten dinner, after the ruckus in the palace, the two of them were a bit hungry. Let's go out and eat. Xiao Lulang said. In the end, he couldn't bear for her to cook in the middle of the night. Moreover, this place was close to the busy streets. It was very convenient to eat anything. Okay. Gu Jiao agreed. They went to Xuanwu Avenue. The capital was always very lively on summer nights. The shops were lined up in rows and the hawkers' stalls were like a long dragon. In the middle of the street, there would occasionally be carriages and horses slowly passing by. On both sides, there was an endless stream of people. In the past, it had always been Gu Jiao who walked on the outside. She had to protect her husband. Today she had been placed on the inside by Xiao Lulang. Xiao Lulang leaned on his walking stick. Compared to last year, his body clearly had a bit more masculine strength. He helped her block the flood of people. However, there was a peddler carrying a load who did not walk on the middle path, and insisted on walking on the inside. He almost bumped into Gu Jiao. Xiao Lulang pulled on her arm. His hand did not immediately let go. After a moment of hesitation, he slid down to hold her hand. Don't get lost. Gu Jiao was surprised. She then smiled. Okay. Husband, don't get lost. Xiao Lulang was almost dazzled by her smile. He looked forward and asked, what do you want to eat? Anything is fine, she said. What do you want to eat? He said. Anything is fine for me too. The two of them were not picky eaters. Xiao Lulang looked to the east and said, there's a new noodle restaurant over there. Do you want to try it? Their braised noodles are very delicious. You've eaten it before? Gu Jiao turned her head to look at him and asked. He nodded. I ate it when I was young. At that time, their family had not yet opened such a prosperous area. They had to go to a very remote suburb to eat it. In the past few years, they seem to have made a fortune and opened several branches. As for his previous identity, he would not take the initiative to talk about it. However, if it was brought up, he would not deliberately avoid it. However, he had never admitted who he was. Marquis Xianping's illegitimate son, Xiao Lulang. This was the only identity he could reveal to those close to him. There were not many people who knew about this identity. In his family, only Gu Jiao, Madame Yao, and the little monk knew about it. Gu Yan, that little imp, might have guessed something, but he should not have guessed as far as Xiao Heng. As for Gu Jiao, Xiao Lulang did not ask how far she had guessed. And Gu Jiao did not seem to want to get to the bottom of this matter. She respected him and trusted him. It had nothing to do with who he was. Gu Jiao curved her lips. All right, then let's go eat braised noodles. Although this noodle restaurant was newly opened, both the upper and lower floors were full. Oh, it's already so late and there are still so many people eating noodles? Gu Jiao asked strangely. The waiter smiled apologetically. It's a newly opened restaurant. Most of the customers are regular customers. Moreover, our restaurant doesn't only have noodles. Our cold dishes and stews are also the best. It's hot right now, so it's hot to eat inside. How about this little one set up a table in the courtyard for you two to cool down? There were several tables set up in front of the restaurant. At a glance, it looked just like the food stalls in her previous life. Gu Jiao felt a bit closer to this place. Xiao Lulang looked at her and then said to the waiter, all right, you can set it up. Ah. 2 guests, this way please. The waiter welcomed the two of them into the noodle restaurant with a smile. They walked through the main hall and arrived at the spacious courtyard. The courtyard was very large and very quiet, but their vision was not obstructed. Sitting here, they could see everything in the restaurant. It was like they could see the world's thousands of sales. The waiter brought over a table and a long bench. The two of them sat on a long bench and ordered a bowl of braised noodles and 2 cold dishes. They did not order the stews because it would be a waste if they didn't finish them. While they were waiting for the braised noodles, the waiter came over with a smile and asked, 2 guests, our restaurant has run out of tables. 2 more guests have arrived. Can they sit at the same table as you? The two of them had no objections. The waiter led the guests over. No one would have expected it to be the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess. The two of them were traveling incognito, and did not bring any palace maids or eunuchs. They only had a court expert as their driver. The Crown Prince and the Crown Princess clearly did not expect to meet Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao here. Whenever the Crown Prince saw Xiao Lulang, he would think of that thick stack of math problems and his head would instantly hurt. The Crown Prince had never seen Gu Jiao before. He only saw Xiao Lulang sitting together with a woman, and was rather surprised. He had heard that Xiao Lulang was married. Was this woman Xiao Liulang's wife, or one of those shady women he had outside? The crown prince did not care. Women were originally the accessories of men. Whether or not this woman was Xiao Liulang's wife, the crown prince would not look her in the eye. The crown prince knitted his brows and was a bit unwilling to eat here. After all, no one would be in the mood to eat when facing a teacher like Xiao Lulang. Their minds would be filled with his questions, all right? But the crown prince could not chase Xiao Lulang away. That would be too arrogant and despotic. It would not match the reputation he had built up in the past few years. He wanted to leave. The crown princess suddenly pulled on his sleeve and said softly, "Your Highness, there is a seat here." The crown prince thought, "Don't you recognize who that fellow is? Xiao Lulang. My uncle's illegitimate son. My imperial father's trusted official, my Hanlin Academy teacher." The crown princess said warmly, "It seems to be Xiao Xiuzhua. What a coincidence." As she said this, her gaze landed on Xiao Liulang's incomparably handsome face. At this time, the waiter brought 2 bowls of braised noodles over. "Guests, your braised noodles." Xiao Lulang did not even look up. It seemed like the waiter was too loud, so he did not hear the crown princess's words. The crown princess was slightly embarrassed. The crown prince thought that her words were directed at him, and sighed helplessly. "Yes, it's him. What a coincidence." The crown princess's eyelashes trembled slightly. She said with a smile, "The capital is so big. To be able to meet while eating supper, it must be fate between the crown prince and Xiao Xiuzhua." Her voice was not loud, but it was just loud enough for Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao to hear. Both of them ignored her. The crown prince said disdainfully, "Who wants to be fated with him?" "I'm hungry," the crown princess said. Then sit down." The crown prince reluctantly pulled the crown princess to sit down across from the two. He said to the waiter, "Bring out all of the delicious dishes here." "Can the crown prince finish them all?" Xiao Lulang finally paid attention to him, but his tone was not good. The crown prince swept a glance at the 2 bowls of braised noodles in front of the two, and thought that this was too shabby. He said generously, "Tonight it's my treat. Xiao Xiuzhua can eat as much as he wants, no need to be courteous with me. If the salary of Hanlin Academy is not high, Xiao Xiuzhua can come to my food to be an aid in name." Xiao Lulang looked coolly at him. Forming cliques for personal gain is a serious crime. Is the crown prince sure you want to do this? It was not rare to have aides and customers in the Fu. The emperor would usually close one eye, but if it was a disciple of the Son of Heaven, it would touch the emperor's bottom line. Xiao Lulang said neutrally, "I am a disciple of the Son of Heaven and should serve His Majesty wholeheartedly. If the crown prince wants me to go to your Fu in name, where does that place His Majesty?" The crown prince choked and did not make a sound. Just now he had been so focused on mocking Xiao Lulang that he had forgotten that this guy was a grand scholar on 2 lists, had been summoned by Fu Huang, and had eaten at the Deer Cry banquet. He was a true disciple of the Son of Heaven. Was he trying to steal Fu Huang's man? If this got out, how would other people view him, the crown prince? "Cough, cough, cough," the crown prince said seriously. "Just now, I was just testing you. Just remember your identity." Soon the two's cold dishes were served. It was a cold dish of 3 shreds, and a dish of braised lamb. Xiao Lulang picked up a piece of the most tender lamb, and put it in Gu Jiao's bowl. The crown princess looked at Xiao Lulang and then looked at Gu Jiao. This was the first time she had seen the two at such a close distance. Xiao Liulang's appearance constantly overlapped with that youthful face in her impression, but also repeatedly peeled away. That bright and straightforward young man, his eyes were innocent, warm and clear. The Xiao Lulang in front of her, however, had an additional sense of alienation and coldness that kept people at arm's length. His facial features lacked the childishness of the past, and he had a bit more of a man's reserved and heroic spirit. However, when he looked at Gu Jiao, his gaze was different from everyone else's. There was a gentleness that even he did not notice. He had once looked at her like this. It was as if his eyes only contained her. The crown princess secretly tightened her grip on her handkerchief. What am I thinking? Why did I think of him as Ahung? This restaurant's lamb was very much to Gu Jiao's liking. She ate with great relish. The crown prince originally did not plan on paying attention to her, but Xiao Lulang had choked him. If he did not respond, the atmosphere would become awkward. He subconsciously turned his gaze to Gu Jiao's face. If he did not look, he would not know. Once he did, he was given a fright. How could her face? Dear guest, your dishes have arrived. The waiter filled the table with the restaurant's signature dishes. Although there was a dazzling array of dishes, for some reason, he felt that Xiao Liulang's plate of lamb was the most delicious. Gu Jiao and Xiao Lulang had more or less finished eating. Just as they were about to leave, Gu Jiao suddenly sniffed. Waiter, what smells so good? The waiter smiled and said, It's our restaurant's osmanthus wine. If dear guest likes it, I will gift you a jar. A new restaurant has opened. Please come back often in the future. Is this wine? Gu Jiao looked at the bottle that the waiter handed over and asked. The waiter said, It's not wine. You won't get drunk. Girls like it the most. Gu Jiao took a sip. In the next second, with a bang, her small head hit the table and she passed out drunk. It was a good thing that Xiao Liulang's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast, as he quickly placed the back of his hand on her forehead. The waiter was embarrassed. Dear guest is really unable to handle alcohol, the crown prince consort softly said. We have a carriage, let the coachman send you back. The crown prince secretly curled his lips. Why were they being so good to them? Xiao Lulang expressionlessly said. No need. The crown prince chuckled. See, they don't appreciate it. Xiao Lulang ignored the crown prince and used his other hand to gently pat Gu Jiao's small shoulder. He softly called in her ear. Jiao Jiao, it's time to go back. Gu Jiao's eyes were starry. It's time to go home, he gently said. Gu Jiao sat up straight. Her phoenix eyes were wide and round and her expression was very serious. I'm not drunk. He softly coaxed her and his lips slightly hooked. Jiao Jiao isn't drunk. That clean youthful voice had a trace of a man's magnetism that directly melted people's hearts. Digression. The very, very doting Lulang. The latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated at a faster rate. Millions of novels are free to read. Novels with connotations that can't be found online are all available here. https://www.zhhbqg.com/89642_896428226/111491418. HTML Genius remembered this website's address in 1 second. www.zhhbqg.com Bikago mobile reading website, zhhbqg.com. Chapter 339. The newest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. The novel will be updated even faster. Millions of novels will be read for free. Novels with content that cannot be found online will be available here. The crown princess clenched her handkerchief tightly. Xiao Lulang paid the bill and left with Gu Jiao. Don't look at how her expression did not change. As if she was not drunk in the slightest, Xiao Lulang could see that she was really drunk. She just pretended to be very serious. Xiao Lulang held her soft but calloused hand and walked out of the restaurant. The crown princess watched the two go out together, ignoring the gazes of the people around them. She suddenly felt a little upset. Even if reason told her that this was not Aheng and was just an illegitimate child of a lowly status, she still could not help but think, if Aheng was still alive, would he also grow up to be such an enchanting man? It was not that the previous Xiaoheng was not handsome enough, but at that time, Xiaoheng still had a childish air. He was a child's handsome face. Although he could still dazzle time, he would not cause people to have romantic thoughts. Unlike the current Xiao Lulang, who had a unique temperament between a young man and a young man. His appearance, his aura, and even his cold and distant aura that kept people at a distance all made women mesmerized. He seemed to be a little taller than the crown prince. Before Xiao Heng passed away, he did not even reach the crown prince's chin. Lin Lang. The crown prince called her. The crown princess' eyelashes trembled slightly. My handkerchief is dirty. I will go to the carriage to get a new one. As she spoke, she stood up and walked out. She did not get on the carriage. Instead, she followed in the direction that Xiao Lulang and Gu Jiao left. The two turned into a small alley. Gu Jiao did not walk, squatting on the ground and drawing circles. Xiao Lulang looked at her in amusement. Why aren't you walking? Gu Three Sui. I can't walk anymore. Xiao Lulang. Then what do you do? Gu Three Sui. I need a kiss before I can walk. Xiao Lulang squatted down and looked at her deeply. Are you sure? Gu Sansui nodded. Xiao Lulang kissed her forehead. Gu Sizhui stood up, but he still didn't leave. One kiss was not enough. When the crown prince consort arrived at the entrance of the alley, she saw the ambiguous scene between the two of them in the alley. In the pitch-black alley, there were two inseparable figures. Xiao Lulang pressed her against the wall. One hand circled around her back and hugged her slender waist, pulling her into his embrace. His other hand clasped the back of her head and lowered his head to press down on her. Even through the darkness, the crown princess still felt this man's possessiveness and gentleness. There was clearly a strong and domineering aura on his body, but he restrained it carefully. How could he, Lin Lang? The crown prince shook the crown princess's shoulder. The crown princess suddenly came back to her senses. She had already returned to the crown prince's side, but her mind was full of the scene of Xiao Lulang lowering his head and kissing Gu Jiao. She couldn't see it clearly because she was too far away, but the ambiguous aura filled her entire chest like a raging flame. She calmed down and said with an embarrassed smile, Your Highness. The crown prince looked at her in puzzlement and asked, The food is cold. Why aren't you eating? I called you for a long time, but you didn't hear me. What were you thinking about? The crown princess didn't know what to say, her mind in a mess. The crown prince furrowed his brows. Was it that Xiao Lulang? You seemed to have lost your soul when you saw him. You thought of Aheng, didn't you? You haven't forgotten Aheng. The crown princess lowered her eyes, saying, Please calm down, Your Highness. I wasn't thinking about him just now, but about the girl next to him. That ugly girl with a birthmark on her face? The crown prince was still skeptical. In order to wash away the suspicion that she was thinking about Aheng, the crown princess could only brace herself and shift the topic to Gu Jiao. Does Your Highness know who that girl is? Who? The crown prince casually asked. The crown princess said. She is together with Xiao Xiuzhua. Is the crown prince not curious about who she is? The crown prince said without much concern. It's either his wife or his concubine, or it's just a flower outside. This prince has seen this sort of thing many times, so there's nothing strange about it. What this prince is curious about is, this Xiao Lulang is the new top scholar. Why did he find a girl with such an unbearable appearance? She is the daughter of Ding and Marquis Manor. The crown princess said. The crown prince was startled. The Gu family's young miss? This prince has seen the Gu family's young miss. She didn't look like this. The crown princess warmly said. The Gu family's second young miss that Your Highness saw was a girl from the countryside that was mistakenly picked up. The one just now was the true daughter of the first wife of the Marquis Manor. Oh. The crown prince suddenly realized. This prince remembers now. This prince has indeed heard of such a thing. It was not the crown prince's fault for not remembering it. There were many people in the capital. There were large families and large families. There were many more melodramatic things than this. He would just treat it as a topic of conversation after a meal. How could he really remember it? The crown prince knit his brows. Then she, the crown princess said. She is Xiao Liulang's wife. The two met in the countryside and got married. It was only after they got married that they found out that they were the wrong daughters. The crown prince snorted. It seems that Xiao Liulang's luck is quite good. A poor boy from the countryside casually married a small village girl, and actually married the Marquis Manor's daughter. Although she is a bit ugly, her status is not bad. The crown princess paused then said. But this concubine has heard that this young Miss Gu has never returned to the Gu family. Why has she not returned? The crown prince asked in confusion. This concubine is not clear. The crown princess shook her head. The crown prince thought for a bit. Perhaps she is too unpresentable, and the Ding and Marquis Manor cannot afford to lose this person. The crown princess slightly shook her head. Does the crown prince know about the bellows? Halfway through her words, a hearty laugh came from the entrance to the courtyard. Second brother. Old fourth. The crown prince's eyes lit up and he quickly waved at him. Why have you also come? Quickly sit, quickly sit. Didn't I hear that their family opened a new store? I happened to pass by and did not think that second brother would also be here. The fourth prince came to the table and cupped his hands in greeting to the crown princess, second sister-in-law. The crown princess smiled and nodded. The two brothers naturally had things to say, and did not continue the previous topic. The crown princess silently drank the osmanthus wine in her cup. On the other side, Xiao Lulang brought a certain person home. This time, the osmanthus wine was too strong. It was not something that the wine that Xiao Lulang brought back from the provincial capital, or Gu Jiao's pear blossom wine could compare to. Gu Jiao could not take it the moment she arrived home. She threw herself face down on the soft bed and fell asleep. Gu Jiao slept too deeply. When she woke up, the men in the family had already gone to work or school. Yuya brought in a bowl of hangover soup. Eldest miss, you're awake? Before son-in-law left, he told me to let you drink a bowl of hangover soup first when you wake up. Gu Jiao was fine now, but since it was her husband's good intentions, she still obediently drank it. She went to see Yao Shi. Yao Shi was fine, but the fetal movement was very strange. It's not moving at all. I'm afraid that it's... Yao Shi did not say anything inauspicious. Gu Jiao took out a stethoscope and listened to the little fellow's heartbeat. It's normal. Don't worry. Yao Shi held back for a long time before saying in a wrong tone. She is so lazy. Other than when Marquis Gu came, the little fellow would move a lot and kick around with his little feet. The rest of the time, he would not move at all. If her daughter did not have a way to hear the little fellow's heartbeat, Yao Shi would have thought that something was wrong with the little fellow in her belly. Isn't the first child like this? Gu Jiao asked. You and Yan love to cause trouble in my belly. It caused Yao Shi to be unable to sleep all night. At that time, she felt that it was very tiring. This pregnancy was comfortable, but she felt uneasy. Gu Jiao nodded. Oh, then it's possible that he really is a lazy baby. Yao Shi's belly swelled up. It was like a silent protest. Gu Jiao went to the medical center. To her surprise, she saw Huang Zhong. Huang Zhong had been building a manor with Marquis Gu, and had not returned to the capital for a long time. Eldest Mississippi, Huang Zhong respectfully saluted. Is something the matter? Gu Jiao asked. It's like this. The Marquis wanted me to send some banknotes to young Miss. As Huang Zhong spoke, he pulled out a brocade box. This is 1,000 taels. Eldest Miss, please accept it. Oh. Gu Jiao accepted it. Huang Zhong was dumbfounded. That's not it. Eldest Miss, isn't your reaction a bit off? Are you not going to ask why the Marquis suddenly sending you banknotes? The truth was that the old Marquis had somehow found out that the Marquis had cut off the young master's monthly allowance. He was furious and taught the Marquis a lesson. After that, he forced the Marquis to open his little treasury, and took out a sum of money to send to the eldest Miss. Forget it. The eldest Miss' way of doing things was strange. She would even beat her own father. How could she be expected to act like a normal person? Huang Zhong gave up on the treatment. He only needed to clearly explain what needed to be explained. He continued. This 1,000 taels is for the eldest Miss to thank the eldest Miss for taking care of the young master. Also, there is 10 taels of monthly allowance for the young master. In the future, the manor will send 10 taels of silver to the young master every month. Gu Jiao nodded. Got it. I will pass it to Yan. In the evening, Gu Jiao returned home. Gu Yan, who was shoveling chicken poop, received the 10 taels of silver from the Marquis. He put his hands on his waist and laughed 3 times. Little monk. He found little Jing Kong in the vegetable garden in the front yard. He proudly stuffed the shovel and small dustpan into the little Jing Kong's little hands. Well, from now on you can shovel chicken poop yourself. Little Jing Kong frowned and looked at him. Are you slacking off again? Gu Yan raised his eyebrows and smiled. He bent down and took the 2 silver ingots in front of him, saying proudly, See? What is this? Little Jing Kong cast a sidelong glance at him. Are you stupid? You have to ask me about this. Hiss. Gu Yan was so angry that he took a deep breath. He knelt down on one knee and looked at the little guy. I mean, I have money now. I can pay back the money I owe you. I don't have to work part-time to pay my debts anymore. Really? Little Jing Kong dragged his tone and looked at him suspiciously. Gu Yan chuckled and said, Of course it is. This is real money. If you don't believe me, you can ask Jiao Jiao. Generally, a 4-year-old child would not recognize the specific size of silver, but little landlord had been collecting rent for more than half a year. He paid 30 taels of silver a month, so he was very familiar with silver. This is 10 taels of silver, Little Jing Kong said. Yes, it is 10 taels of silver. Gu Yan nodded. Little Jing Kong said, Oh, do you know how much you owe me? This question made Gu Yan speechless. Yes, how much did he owe the little guy? Little Jing Kong put down the small spatula and small dustpan, and took out a small account book from his arms. He flipped through it and said to Gu Yan seriously, You borrowed a total of 50 taels of silver from me. The interest is 3 cents. That is to say, the monthly interest is 1.5 taels. You have been in debt for 9 months, so the total interest is 13.5 taels. Gu Yan was stunned. But I have been working for so long. How can this be calculated? Little Jing Kong shook his head helplessly and broke the account book into pieces for him to calculate. He did not use an abacus and directly calculated in his mind. You have 4 main sources of income. Feeding the chickens once a day, 5 copper coins. Walking the chickens once a day, 5 copper coins. Cleaning the chicken poop once a day, 5 copper coins. Praising me once a day, 10 copper coins. Gu Yan was confused. Why do I praise you so much? He did not think much of it before, but after listening carefully today, he felt that it was a scam. Little Jing Kong said seriously, Isn't it because I have too many good points? It is easier for you to earn money. I am thinking for you. Gu Yan's face was full of doubt. Do I look easy to fool? Little Jing Kong. You are indeed easy to fool in terms of knowledge. Little Jing Kong cleared his throat and flipped to a page. He looked at the data in the account book and continued. But you have not praised me for 8 months. You have only praised me for 1 month, so the total is 300 copper coins. Cleaning the chicken poop 100 times, 500 copper coins. Walking the chickens 20 times, 100 copper coins. Feeding the chickens 35 times, 175 copper coins. The total is 1 tael of silver and 75 copper coins. Adding the 10 taels of silver you have, it is 11 taels of silver and 75 copper coins. He closed the account book and sighed like a little adult. All your assets are not even enough to pay me the interest. Gu Yan was stunned. This, Little Jing Kong flipped to another page. I haven't counted the chickens that you have spoiled, so I will deduct 100 copper coins. For saying that I am not cute, I will deduct 500 copper coins. Gu Yan was furious. Why are you deducting so much? Little Jing Kong said, Little Ba stole chicken food 3 times, so I will deduct 200 copper coins. Gu Yan looked at the stupid little dog. Little Ba lay on the ground and covered its eyes with its paws. I can't see it, I can't see it, I can't see it. Gu Yan was so angry. How dare you steal chicken food? Do you still remember that you are a dog? Gu Yan clenched his fists. Ai. How would I know that you did not just casually record it? Little Jing Kong said frankly and confidently. Every time I record the accounts, I ask Jiao Jiao to sign it. Jiao Jiao is the guarantor. If you have any questions, you can ask Jiao Jiao directly. Baby Gu felt wronged. Baby Gu did not say anything. Little Jing Kong kept the account book and bent down to pick up the small spatula and dustpan on the ground. He put them back into Gu Yan's hands and patted Gu Yan's. He wanted to pat Gu Yan's shoulders, but he was too small to do so. He could only pat Gu Yan's thigh. Okay, now you can go scoop chicken poop. Brother Yan, good luck. Gu Yan, Woo, the latest chapter of this book is not finished yet. For more exciting content, please scan the QR code below to download the app. Novels are updated faster and more complete. Millions of novels are free to read. All the novels that cannot be found on the internet are available here. https://www.zhbqg.com/89642_826/111491099. HTML Genius memorized the website's address. www.zhbqg.com Bikuga mobile reading website. zhbqg.com. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.